The narrative regarding Narcissus is a fitting one, illustrating the tale of a young man who daily knelt beside a lake to admire his own allure. He was so entranced by his reflection that ultimately he fell into the water and drowned. At the site of his demise, a flower was said to bloom, named the Narcissus. However, this is not the version provided by the book's author. According to the narrative, upon Narcissus's death, the forest goddesses arrived and discovered that the once freshwater lake had transformed into a salty body of tears. "Why do you cry?" the goddesses inquired. "I grieve for Narcissus," the lake responded. "It is no wonder you lament for him," they replied, "for we continually chase him through the woods. Only you could witness his beauty up close." The lake was questioned about Narcissus's attractiveness. The goddesses pondered, realizing that it was by the water's edge where he knelt daily to admire his own reflection. After a moment of silence, the lake finally confessed, "I mourn for Narcissus, not because he was beautiful, but because each time he knelt by my banks, I could perceive my own beauty mirrored in the depths of his eyes." That's a captivating tale found within The Alchemist. Part 1. The boy's name was Santiago. As dusk descended, he arrived at a deserted church with his flock. The roof had long since collapsed, and a massive sycamore tree had taken root where the sacristy once stood. He decided to spend the night there, ensuring the sheep entered the room through the gate before laying some planks across the gap to prevent the flock from straying overnight. There were no wolves in that area, only animals that might wander at night. The boy knew he would spend the entirety of the next day searching for any lost sheep. He swept the floor with his jacket and lay down, using the book he had just finished as a pillow. He told himself he would need to start picking thicker books, as they lasted longer and made for cozier pillows. When he awoke, it was still dark, and he looked up to see the stars of the partially collapsed roof. "I want to sleep a bit longer," he thought. That night, he had the same dream as before, waking up once again just before it concluded. Rising, he grabbed his staff and began to rouse the sheep that were still slumbering. He noticed that as soon as he stirred, most of his animals began to awaken as well, as a mysterious energy connected his life to theirs after spending 2 years leading them to the countryside in search of food and water. They had grown accustomed to his presence. He quietly remarked that they were aware of his timetable, and after a moment's reflection, it dawned on him that the situation might actually be reversed. He had become attuned to their routine. However, some of them required a little extra time to awaken. The boy gently nudged them one by one with his substance. Each was called by name. He always held the belief that the sheep could comprehend his words. There were occasions when he would recite passages from his books that left a mark on him, or share tales of the solitude and joy of a shepherd in the fields. Occasionally, he would recount all the sights he had observed in the villages they traversed. Recently, though, his conversations had centered on just one topic. A girl, the daughter of a merchant from the village they would arrive at in roughly 4 days. He had only visited that village once. A year earlier, the merchant owned a dry goods store and insisted on having the sheep presented to him to avoid any dishonesty in transactions. A friend had informed the boy about this shop, and he had taken his sheep there. "I need to sell some wool," he told the merchant. The shop bustled with activity, and the man asked the shepherd to wait until the afternoon. As a result, the boy settled on the steps of the store and retrieved a book from his bag. "I didn't realize shepherds could read," came a girl's voice from behind him. She was a typical Andalusian girl, with flowing black hair and eyes that vaguely mirrored the nearby Moorish architecture. "Usually, I learn more from my sheep than I do from books," he replied. During the 2 hours they conversed, she introduced herself as the merchant's daughter and spoke about life in the village, where every day seemed to blend into the next. The shepherd told her about the Andalusian landscape and shared news from the other towns. It was a delightful shift from his usual discussions. She mentioned wanting to learn to read, just like everyone else does in school, she remarked. "Well, if you can't read, why are you just a shepherd?" The boy mumbled a response that allowed him to dodge her question. Convinced that she would never grasp the truth, he continued sharing tales of his adventures, and as he spoke, he noticed her bright Moorish eyes widen in fear and astonishment. As time slipped away, he found himself hoping that the day would never conclude and that her father would remain preoccupied, keeping him waiting. Over the course of 3 days, he realized he was experiencing a feeling he had never known before, the longing to settle in one place forever alongside the girl with the raven. The days would never feel the same again, but at last the merchant arrived and asked the boy to share the sheep he had purchased for the wall. He requested the shepherd to return the following year. Now, only 4 days remained until he would arrive back in that same village. Excitement and unease coursed through him. Perhaps the girl had forgotten about him. Countless shepherds came and went, and he realized that it didn't matter. He was aware of girls in other towns, but deep down, he understood that it truly had no significance. Shepherds, like wandering salespeople, always found a place where someone could make them forget the pleasures of carefree traveling. As dawn broke, the shepherd guided his sheep towards the sun. They never faced the burden of choices. He thought perhaps that was why they remained close to him. Their only concerns revolved around food and water, and as long as the boy could locate the best pastures in Andalusia, they would remain his companions. Yes, their daily routine was monotonous, with seemingly endless hours between sunrise and sunset. They had never picked up a book in their lives and did not comprehend the tales the boys shared about city sights. They were satisfied with merely food and water. In return, they generously provided companionship. He pondered that if he were to turn monstrous today and begin slaying them one by one, it would only be after most of the flock had been slaughtered that the boy would understand their trust. They had forgotten how to depend on their instincts because he had been leading them to pasture, nursing the wounds of surprise. Perhaps the church with the sycamore, from which his dreams originated, was indeed cursed, causing him to have the same dream again and stirring anger towards his loyal companions. He sipped a bit of the wind left over from his previous night's dinner and pulled his jacket tighter around him. He was aware that in just a few hours, with the sun reaching its peak, the heat would become unbearable, making it impossible for him to guide his flock through the fields. This was the time of day when all of Spain took rest during the summer, with the heat lingering until night fell. Throughout that time, he had to carry his jacket, yet he made no complaint about its weight. He recalled that because he had the jacket, he had endured the morning chill. He needed to prepare for change in thought and felt thankful for the jacket's warmth and weight. It served a purpose. The boy's ambition in life revolved around exploration, and after 2 years traversing the Andalusian landscape, he had become familiar with all the cities within the region. He intended to share with the girl how it was that ordinary shepherds could read, mentioning that he had spent time in seminary until he was 16, as his parents aspired for him to become a priest, a source of pride for their simple farming family. They worked diligently just to ensure there was food and water, similar to their sheep, even as he studied Latin, Spanish, and theology. However, from a young age, he had yearned to experience the world, a pursuit he valued more than the knowledge of God or an understanding of humanity's essence. One afternoon during a visit with his family, he mustered the courage to express to his father his wish not to become a priest, but rather to journey out into the world. "People pass through this village," his father told him. "They come seeking novelty, but when they depart, they leave as the same individuals they were upon arrival. They climb the mountain to witness the castle, and often reflect that the past was better than the present. Whether they possess blonde hair or dark skin, they are fundamentally similar to the people living here. But I wish to see the castles and towns of those people," the boy countered, explaining that visitors to their land often remarked on their desire to stay forever. His father replied, "I would also like to witness their lands and learn how they live. The individuals who come here have wealth to spare, allowing them to travel. But among us, most truly desire to roam. Every shepherd will remain a shepherd." The following day, his father gifted him 3 Spanish gold coins he had discovered in the fields, initially intended as part of his inheritance. "Use these to purchase a flock, take them to the fields, and learn that our countryside is the finest, with women of remarkable beauty," he advised, offering his blessing. In his father's eyes, the boy could sense a lingering desire for travel, a wish still vibrant despite a lifetime of struggle for basic necessities. As the horizon glowed red and the sun rose, the boy reminisced about that conversation with his father, feeling a surge of happiness. He had already encountered numerous castles and met various women, yet none compared to the one who awaited him in just a few days. To Jack, a book he could exchange for another in the group of sheep, but most importantly, he was able to live his dream daily. If he grew weary of the Andalusian landscapes, he could sell a sheep and go see the sea. By the time he had enough of the ocean, he would have already explored new cities and met different women, experiencing other opportunities for happiness. He couldn't have discovered God in the seminary. He sought the sunrise whenever he could, looking for a new path to explore. Despite having traveled through that region numerous times, he had never visited those ancient ruins. The world was vast and endless, allowing him to let his sheep guide him for a while as he found other intriguing sights. The issue was that they weren't even aware they were walking a different path each day. They failed to notice the fields renewed with each changing season. Their thoughts revolved solely around food and water. Perhaps we all share that mindset. The boys did, including myself. I hadn't considered other women since meeting the merchant's daughter. Gazing at the sun, he calculated he would reach the town before noon, where he could trade his book for a larger one, refill his wine bottle, and enjoy a pleasant meal. He needed to prepare for his encounter with the girls, not want to dwell on the fear that some other shepherd with a larger flock might arrive before him and seek her hand. It was a potential for dreams coming to fruition that added excitement to life, he thought, glancing once more at the sun's position and quickening his pace. Suddenly, he recalled that in the town there was an elderly woman who interpreted dreams. The old woman guided the boy to a room at the back of her home, separated from the living space by a curtain of colored beads. The room contained a table, an image of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, and 2 chairs. The woman sat and gestured for him to join her. Then she took both of his hands into hers and began a quiet chant, which resembled a gypsy prayer. The boy had encountered gypsies on his travels. They also journeyed but lacked flocks of sheep. People claimed that gypsies lived by deceiving others, and it was rumored they had a pact with the devil, kidnapping children and taking them to mysterious camps to enslave them. As a child, he had been terrified that he might be captured by gypsies, and now that childhood fear resurfaced as the old woman grasped his hand. However, with the image of the Sacred Heart of Jesus nearby, he tried to reassure himself, not wanting his hand to betray him by trembling in front of her. The woman observed him closely, and he quietly recited the Lord's Prayer, feeling an air of uneasiness. Intrigued, she maintained her gaze on the boy's hands before lapsing into silence. The boy's anxiety grew, causing his hands to quiver, prompting him to swiftly withdraw them. "I didn't come here for you to read my palm," he declared, already feeling remorse for his visit. For a moment, he considered it wiser to pay her and leave without acquiring any insights, realizing he was attributing excessive significance to his recurring dream. "So you could discover the meanings of your dreams," stated the old woman, remarking that dreams serve as a divine language through which God communicates. "I can decipher his messages, but should he express himself in the language of the soul, only you can grasp that." Nonetheless, she insisted on charging for consultation, which the boy considered yet another trick. However, he resolved to be bold, as a shepherd must take risks against wolves and drought, which contributes to the thrill of his profession. "I've had the same dream on 2 occasions, he shared. In it, I find myself in a field with my flock when a child appears, play with the animals. I'm uneasy with this. Strangers frighten the sheep, yet children always manage to engage them without instilling fear. I'm not sure why that is or how animals perceive human ages." "Tell me more about your dream," urged the woman. "I have to return to my cooking, and since your funds are limited, I cannot spare much time." "The child has played with my sheep for quite a while," the boy continued, slightly perturbed. Suddenly, the child grasped my hands and transported me to the Egyptian pyramids. He paused briefly to gauge her recognition of these landmarks, but she remained silent. At the Egyptian pyramids, he articulated the phrase deliberately, ensuring she understood. "The child told me, if you come here, you'll uncover the hidden treasure." Just as the child began to indicate the exact location, I awakened both times. The woman remained quiet for a while. Eventually, she took his hands again and scrutinized them closely. "I won't charge you anything now," she stated, "but I want a tenth of the treasure if you succeed in finding it." The boy chuckled in joy, realizing he might retain his savings due to a dream about concealed riches. "Well, interpret the dream then," he insisted. "First, swear to me that you will give me 1/10 of your treasure in exchange for what I'm about to reveal." The shepherd took an oath without hesitation, would end his life and urge him to vow again while gazing at the depiction of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. "It's an aspiration articulated in worldly terms," she explained. "I can decipher it, yet the decoding is quite challenging. This is precisely why I believe I deserve a percentage of what you uncover. Within my insights, you are to head towards the pyramids. I have never encountered them, yet if it were a child who revealed them to you, they surely exist there. You will discover a fortune that will enrich you." The youth was taken aback, and then became annoyed. "You must seek the elderly woman for assistance with this." But then he recalled that he would have to compensate her. "I didn't want to squander my time for this," he remarked. "I informed you that your dream is complex. It is the uncomplicated aspects of life that are most remarkable. Only the sagacious can grasp this, and as I lack wisdom, I have had to acquire other abilities, such as dream interpretation. Well, how will I obtain the treasure? I merely interpret dreams. I am not equipped to actualize them, therefore I rely on what my daughters have given me. And what if I never make it to Egypt, and I don't receive any payment?" I've experienced this before. The woman instructed the boy to leave, asserting she had already expended too much time on him. Thus the boy felt disheartened. He resolved that he would no longer place faith in dreams. He recalled several tasks needed his attention. Once he visited the marketplace in search of food. Among other items, his book that was larger caught his eye, and he spotted a bench in the square where he could take a break. The day was warm, and the breeze was delightful. The sheep were located at the city gates within a stable owned by a friend. The boy encountered many individuals in the city, making travel enticing to him. He consistently made friends and didn't have to devote all his moments to them. When one sees the same faces regularly as he did in seminary, they gradually become integrated into that person's existence, and then they wish for the individual to alter. If someone does not conform to what others desire, the others grow upset. Everyone appears to possess a clear notion of how individuals ought to conduct their lives, except for their own. He resolved to bide his time until the sun declined a bit further before guiding his flock back to the fields. In 3 days, he would be with the merchant's daughter. He began to study the book. You will find right on the first page, describing the burial ceremony and the names of those involved, proved to be quite challenging to pronounce. If he ever needed assistance, he would introduce one individual at a time, ensuring the reader wouldn't have to struggle with memorizing numerous names, allowing him to finally focus on the text. He found the book more enjoyable. The burial took place on a wintry day, and he embraced the chill as he read on. An elderly man settled next to him and attempted to initiate a dialogue. "What are they doing?" the old man queried, gesturing at the individuals in the plaza. The boy replied curtly, making it clear he preferred to focus on his reading, though in reality, he was contemplating sharing his sheep in front of the merchant's daughter to demonstrate that he was capable of accomplishing challenging tasks. He had envisioned that moment countless times. Every time, the girl appeared captivated when he explained how the sheep needed to be sheared from the back to the front. He also tried to recall some interesting anecdotes about sheep shearing, most of which he had read in books, but would narrate as if they were drawn from his personal experiences. She would never discern the difference, as she was not literate. Meanwhile, the old man continued in his efforts to engage the boy in conversation, expressing fatigue and thirst and asking for a sip from the boy's bottle. Hoping the old man would leave him in peace, the boy offered his bottle. However, the old man was intent on conversing and inquired about the book the boy was reading. The boy felt inclined to be rude and shift to another bench, but remembered his father's teachings on showing respect to the elderly. Therefore, he held out the book to the old man for 2 reasons. First, he himself was uncertain how to pronounce the title, and second, the old man, unable to read, would likely feel embarrassed. "Change benches," the old man suggested, examining all sides of the book as if it were an odd artifact. "This is an important book, but it's really irritating," said the old man, who revealed he had already read it. He stated that the book was tedious, indicating that the boy still had the opportunity to swap it for another. "It's a book that reiterates what nearly every other book in the world conveys," continued the old man, elaborating that it illustrated humanity's struggle to pursue their own personal legends, and concluded by asserting that everyone is ensnared by the greatest deception of all. "What is the world's greatest lie?" the boy inquired, taken aback by this notion. "In our lives, we frequently lose control over what transpires, becoming subject to the whims of fate. This tops the list of the greatest deceptions in the world." "That has never occurred to me," said the boy. "They wished for me to become a priest, but I opted to be a shepherd instead." "That's much wiser," replied the old man, "since you truly have a passion for wandering." He understood the thoughts racing through the boy's mind. The boy reflected to himself as the old man flipped through the book, seemingly reluctant to part with it. The boy observed that the man's attire appeared peculiar, reminiscent of a storm's aftermath, which wasn't uncommon in those regions. Africa lay just a few hours away from Tarifa, where both of his parents frequently ventured into the city for shopping, reciting the unusual prayer multiple times throughout the day. "Where do you hail from?" the boy inquired. "From various places," the man replied. "One cannot originate from numerous locations," the boy insisted. "I'm a shepherd and have traveled extensively, but I belong to one particular place, a town near an ancient castle where I was born." "Let's just say I was born in Salem," the old man remarked. The boy was unfamiliar with Salem, but hesitated to ask, fearing it would signal his naivete. He observed the bustling crowd in the plaza for a moment. They were coming and going, busy with their lives. "What is Salem like?" he tried to glean. "It remains as it has always been." No hints revealed themselves, but the boy sensed that Salem wasn't located in Andalusia. Had it been, he would have been aware of it. "And what do you do in Salem?" he pressed. "What do I do in Salem?" The old man chuckled. "I am the king of Salem." The boy mused that people often utter strange statements. At times, it felt more comforting to be with the silent sheep or find solace alone with books. Books share captivating narratives from times that linger in your thoughts, yet conversing with others often led to bewildering exchanges. "My name is Melchizedek," announced the old man. "How many sheep do you possess?" "Sufficient," the boy replied, sensing the old man's curiosity in his life. "Well, then we have a predicament. I can assist you if you feel content with your sheep." The boy grew frustrated. He wasn't seeking assistance. The old man, however, requested a drink of his wine and initiated the conversation. "Give me my book," the boy instructed. "I must gather my sheep and be on my way." "Offer me 1/10 of your sheep," proposed the old man, "and I will reveal to you how to unearth the hidden treasure." The boy recalled his dreams and aspirations. He dreamt, and suddenly everything became apparent to him. The old woman had demanded something, but the old man, perhaps her husband, would seek a way to obtain much more money in exchange for information about something that didn't even exist. The man might have once been a gypsy. Before the boy could speak, the old man leaned down, grabbed a stick, and began to inscribe the sand in the plaza. A bright glint caught the boy's eye from the man's chest, dazzling him temporarily. With a swift movement atypical for someone his age, the man covered whatever it was with his case. Once the boy's vision adjusted, he deciphered the old man's writing in the sand. In the small city's plaza, he saw the names of his parents and the seminary he attended. He even recognized the merchant's daughter's name, which he had never mentioned to anyone. "I am the king of Salem," the old man had stated while conversing with the shepherd. Feeling embarrassed for several reasons, particularly because he was uncertain what a personal legend was, the boy listened. "It's what you have always aspired to achieve," the old man explained. "Everyone when young starts with their personal legend in mind. At that stage, everything is transparent and all things are achievable. They're unafraid to dream. And to each individual, there exists a wish for what changes they aspire to see unfold in their lives. Yet as time moves forward, an enigmatic force starts to persuade them that achieving their personal legend may be out of reach." The old man's words held much relevance to the boy, who yearned to uncover the nature of this mysterious force. The merchant's daughter would certainly be intrigued to hear him speak of it. This force may seem negative at first, but in reality, it guides you toward fulfilling your personal legend, preparing your spirit for the journey ahead. There's a profound truth on this planet. No matter who you are or what your pursuits entail, the reason you desire something is that such a yearning springs from the universe's very essence. Your purpose on Earth reveals itself, whether your aspirations are to travel the world, or marry the daughter of a textile merchant, or even embark on a treasure hunt. The universe's soul finds sustenance in both joy and sorrow, and pursuing one's personal legend constitutes a pivotal obligation for each person. All existence is interconnected, and when you truly desire something, the universe conspires to assist you in achieving it. They both remained quiet for a while, observing the plaza and its inhabitants, until the old man broke the silence. "What motivates you to care for the flock of sheep?" he asked. "Because I love to travel," replied the boy. The old man gestured toward a larger item displayed in a shop window at one corner of the plaza, something the boy had long wished to explore during his childhood. He had resolved to first establish his bakery and save some money, planning to spend a month in Africa when he grew old. People often overlook that anyone can, at any moment in their lives, pursue their dreams. "You should have chosen to be a shepherd," the boy suggested. "Well, that crossed my mind," the old man admitted. "But bakers hold more significance than shepherds. Bakers have homes, while shepherds must sleep outdoors. Parents prefer to see their children marry bakers instead of shepherds." A wave of sadness washed over the boy at the thought of the merchant's daughter, who would undoubtedly become a baker. The old man continued, emphasizing that, in the end, what people think about shepherds and beggars often takes precedence over their own personal legends. The old man then seized a book and began reading a page, with the boy waiting patiently until he finally interrupted the old man, just as he had himself been interrupted. "You tell me this because you are striving to fulfill your personal legend, and this is the moment when you are about to relinquish it all. That's when I tend to appear, not always in the same manner, but I show up in various forms. Occasionally, I manifest as a solution. At times, it's wise to seize a moment to facilitate opportunities. I engage in various activities, though most remain unnoticed by others." The elder recounted a tale from the week before when he had to present himself as a stone to a miner who had forsaken everything for years in pursuit of emeralds, having dedicated 5 years to a particular river and unearthing countless stones. Just as the miner was about to abandon his quest, he was on the brink of discovering the emerald with the examination of just one more stone. The old man, recognizing the miner's dedication to his personal legend, chose to intervene. He transformed himself into a stone that rolled to the miner's feet. Fueled by the frustration and anger over 5 fruitless years, the miner picked up the stone and cast it away with such intensity that it shattered, revealing the most exquisite emerald embedded within. The old man expressed with a hint of bitterness that people often discover their purpose early in life, possibly leading them to abandon it prematurely. That's simply how it goes. The boy reminded the old man about his reference to hidden treasure, to which the elder replied that treasure surfaces through the flow of water, yet is also concealed by the very same currents. If the boy wishes to discover his treasure, he must offer 1/10 of his flock. The boy questioned the notion of giving away a portion of his anticipated treasure. The old man's disappointment was evident as he cautioned that if one begins by promising what they lack, they may lose the drive to obtain it. The boy then mentioned he had already promised 1/10 of his treasure to the gypsy, whom the elder remarked were skilled at persuading others. Regardless, it's important to recognize that everything in life comes at a cost, a lesson taught by the warriors of light. The old man returned the book to the boy, instructing him to bring 1/10 of his flock the next day, and he would reveal how to locate the treasure. With that, he disappeared around the corner of the plaza. The boy resumed reading his book, but his focus wavered, feeling tense and disturbed, acknowledging the truth in the old man's words. He went to the bakery and bought a loaf of bread, contemplating whether to share his thoughts with the baker before deciding that sometimes it's best to leave matters unchanged. Say nothing if he were to utter anything, Rebecca would spend 3 days contemplating giving it all up even though he had adapted to a situation the boy could certainly avert causing that level of anxiety. So he started to venture toward the city, and arrived at the gates. There was a small structure there with a window where people purchased tickets to Africa, and he understood that Egypt was part of Africa "Can I assist you?" asked the man. "Behind the window, maybe tomorrow," replied the boy as he walked away. If he managed to sell just one of his fish, he would quickly gather enough money. The notion of penning, another dreamer commented the ticket seller to his assistant, observing the boy retreat. "He doesn't possess enough money for travel." While at the ticket window, the boy recalled his flock and resolved to return to being a shepherd. Over the course of 2 years, he had acquired extensive knowledge about shepherding. He knew how to shear sheep, how to tend to pregnant ewes, and how to safeguard the flock from wolves. He was familiar with all the fields and patches of Andalusia, and he understood the fair price for each of his animals. He opted to take the longest route back to his friend's stable. As he strolled, he passed the city's castle, which interrupted his journey, and ascended the stone ramp that led to the top of the wall. From that vantage point, he could see Africa in the distance. Someone had once told him that it was from there that the Moors had invaded all of Spain. You could nearly see the entire city from where he perched, including the plaza where he conversed with the old man. He cursed the moment he encountered that old man. He thought he had come to town only to discover a woman who could interpret his dream. Not that the old man was at all impressed by the fact that he was a shepherd. They were solitary souls who had long abandoned belief in things and failed to grasp that shepherds grew attached to their sheep. He knew everything about each member of his flock. He was aware of which were lame, which would bear young months from now, and which were the laziest. He could shear them and how to slaughter them. If ever he chose to depart, they would suffer. The wind began to rise. He understood that when people referred to it as the love wind, because the Moors had originated from the Levant at the eastern edge of the Mediterranean, the love wind intensified here. "I am between my flock and my treasure," the boy thought. He was faced with a choice between what he had grown used to and what he desired. There was also the merchant's daughter, but she did not hold the same importance as his flock, since she was not reliant. Perhaps she didn't even recall him, yet he was convinced that it made no difference to her. Each day remained the same image for her, a reflection that never changed, because individuals often overlook the positive occurrences in their daily lives. "With every sunrise, I left behind my father, my mother, and the town of Castle. They had adapted to my absence, and I had too. She would eventually become accustomed to my absence as well." From his vantage point, the boy observed the plaza, where people continuously moved in and out of the bakery. A young couple lingered on a bench, exchanging words, while he conversed previously with the elderly gentleman and shared a kiss. The boy amused himself, trailing off in thought. The wind, growing stronger, brushed against his face, having brought with it hints of the Moors, yet it also carried the scent of the desert and the fields. It brought along the sweat and the aspirations of those from the Midwest, who once yearned for the unknown, for riches, for adventure, and for the pyramids. He envied the wind's freedom, realizing that he could also attain such liberty. Nothing restrained him except his own limitations. The sheep, the merchant's daughter, and the Andalusian fields were merely steps along his path towards realizing his personal legend. The following day, the boy encountered the old man, who had arrived with 6 sheep. In astonishment, the boy observed that his friend had purchased all the remaining sheep. The old man declared that he had always aspired to be a shepherd, viewing this as an auspicious sign. "That's how it usually goes," the old man remarked, referring to the principle of favorability. "When you first play cards, you're almost certain to win. It's called beginner's luck. Why does this happen? There's a force that desires for you to fulfill your personal legend and to give you a taste of success." The old man began examining the sheep and noticed one that was lying down. The boy explained that this sheep was significant, being the most intelligent of the flock and producing the most wool. "Where's the treasure?" the old man inquired. "It's near the pier," the boy replied, taken aback because an old woman had conveyed the same message to him without any cost. To discover the treasure, you must heed the omens. God has crafted a path for everyone. You just need to recognize the omens he has laid out for you. Before the boy could respond, a butterfly flitted between him and the old man, reminding him of something his grandfather had once shared. Butterflies are good omens, just like crickets, grasshoppers, lizards, and 4-leaf clovers. "That's correct," he affirmed. The elderly man possessed the ability to perceive the boy's thoughts, reminiscent of lessons from your grandfather. He remarked that these moments are indeed precious. The old man opened his cake, and the boy was astonished by what he beheld. Men adorned in breastplates of heavy gold, encrusted with jewels. The boy recalled a dazzling sight he had observed the day before. He truly was a king. To prevent unwanted interactions, the old man advised to stay in disguise. He presented 2 stones, one white and one black, embedded in the breastplate center. These stones were known as marine domain. The black denoted yes, while the white indicated no. In moment of uncertainty, these stones would assist in interpreting omens. Always pose an objective question, yet if possible, strive to make your own choices. Regarding the treasures of the pyramids, you already know of my insistence on the payment of 6 sheep for guiding your decision-making process. The boy stored the stones in his pouch, vowing to make his own choices moving forward. Remember that everything you engage in holds only one significance. Do not forget the language of omens. Above all, stay committed to pursuing your personal legend until its fulfillment. Before departing, he shared a story concerning the quest for the secret of happiness, learned from the wisest man in existence. This sage journeyed into the desert for 40 days, ultimately discovering a splendid castle perched on a mountain. It was there that the wise man resided. Upon entering the grand room, rather than encountering a pious figure, he found a flurry of activity. Merchants traversing the space, lively conversations occurring, a small orchestra providing gentle music, and a table laden with a feast delights unique to that region. The wise man engaged with everyone, and the boy anxiously awaited his turn for 2 hours. When finally granted an audience, the sage attentively listened to the boy's purpose for his visit and expressed he had the time to disclose the secret of happiness shortly. He advised the boy to examine the palace and return in 2 hours. Meanwhile, he handed him a teaspoon containing 2 drops of oil, instructing him to carry it as he explored, without spilling any. The boy began to navigate the numerous stairways of the palace, keeping his gaze fixed on the spoon. After the 2 hours elapsed, he returned to the wise man's room, well past the time allocated. It took the master gardener a decade to produce the exquisite parchments found in my library. The boy felt embarrassed and admitted that he hadn't noticed anything. His only focus had been on the spilled oil that the wise man had given him. "Return and appreciate the wonders of my world," instructed the wise man. "You cannot truly know a man until you have seen his home." The boy, feeling relieved, grasped the spoon and resumed his journey through the palace, this time taking in all the artistic masterpieces adorning the ceilings and walls. He noticed the gardens, the surrounding mountains, the vibrant blossoms, and the thoughtful selection of every detail. Upon his return to Wise Man, he recounted everything he had observed, but the wise man questioned, "What happened to the drops of oil I entrusted to you?" Looking down at the spoon, the boy realized the oil was no longer there. "I can only offer you one piece of advice," the wisest of wise men stated. "The key to happiness lies in recognizing all the wonders of the world, while also remembering the drops of oil on the spoon." The shepherd said nothing but understood this important lesson. The king instructed a shepherd who enjoyed wandering, but should never neglect his responsibility. The old man gazed at the boy, gesturing with his hands in a peculiar manner, then took his sheep and walked away. At the highest elevation, an ancient fort built by the Moors allowed one to glimpse Africa. That afternoon, Melchizedek, the king of Salem, sat upon the fort's wall, feeling love wash over him as the wind blew against his face. The sheep, fidgeting nearby and uneasy with their new master, were eager for food and water. Melchizedek observed the small vessel making its way from the harbor, knowing he would never see the boy again, just as he had lost sight of Abraham after sending him on his mission. Such is his duty. The gods are devoid of desires because they lack personal legends, yet the king of Salem earnestly wished for the boy's success. "It's unfortunate he will soon forget my name," he mused. "When he speaks of me, he will only refer to me as the king of Salem." He gazed toward the heavens, feeling somewhat embarrassed. "I recognize it's vanity upon vanity, as you said, my lord, but even an old king must take pride in himself sometimes." How strange Africa seemed to the boy. He sat in a bar reminiscent of the ones that lined the narrow alleys of Tangier. Men were puffing on a large pipe that was frequently exchanged amongst them. Within just a few hours, he observed men strolling with their arms intertwined and women whose faces were hidden behind intricate veils, engaging in the ceremonial display of tapas, while others knelt in prayer. He mused to himself about the infidels, a thought that juxtaposed against his faith as he gazed at the image of Saint Santiago Matamoros on his white steed, sword in hand, and the figures kneeling in reverence at his feet. The boy felt profoundly isolated. The infidels bore a sinister appearance, and amid his hurried travels, he had overlooked a crucial detail that could jeopardize his quest for treasure. Only Arabic was spoken in this land. The bar owner approached, and the boy gestured toward a drink served at a nearby table, which turned out to be better than he anticipated. Though he favored wine, it wasn't his primary concern at that moment. His focus was solely on the treasure and how to acquire it. The sale of a sheep had left him with sufficient money in his pouch, and he was aware of the magic that money held. It ensured that no one truly remained alone. Soon, perhaps within days, he would stand before the pyramids. An elderly man adorned with a gold breastplate wouldn't exist merely to talk about omens and signs. As the boy traversed the street, thoughts of omens filled his mind. The old man had indeed spoken wisely. Living in the fields taught him to discern which path to follow by observing the earth and the heavens. He had learned to recognize the signs of a snake's presence and the troubles it often heralded. He knew there was water nearby, a lesson imparted to him that if God could guide sheep so expertly, he could equally guide a man. This realization brought him comfort and alleviated his sense of solitude. Suddenly, he was approached by a voice speaking Spanish, questioning him about omens. A young man appeared, dressed in Western attire, his skin color indicating he hailed from a different place. He was nearly the same age and height as the boy, and most people around them conversed in Spanish. After all, they were only a couple of hours from Spain. The young man offered to buy him a drink, prompting the boy to request a glass of wine, expressing that he hated feeling alone in this unfamiliar country. The man mentioned that the local religion prohibits it. The boy then informed him that he needed to reach the pyramids. He nearly divulged details about his treasure but thought better of it, revealing too much might lead to demands for a share as payment for assistance. He recalled the old man's advice about giving something that you don't actually possess. I would appreciate it if you could take me there. I can compensate you for your service to my God. Are you familiar with the route? The newcomer asked. The boy noticed that the bar owner was standing close by, listening intently to their discussion. He felt uncomfortable with the man's proximity, but recognized the importance of seizing the opportunity. You need to traverse the entire Sahara Desert, the young man explained, and for that, you require funds. I need to ascertain what resources you have. The boy found this inquiry unusual, yet he had faith that the old man's wisdom was sound. If one truly desires something, the universe often aligns to assist. He took out his money from his pouch, displaying it to the young man. The bar owner approached and observed as well. The two conversed briefly in Arabic, and the bar owner displayed signs of annoyance. "Let's leave," the newcomer urged. The owner wanted them to exit. The newcomer only needed to settle the bill, but the owner grasped his arm and unleashed a barrage of angry words. Though the boy felt a surge of strength and a desire to retaliate, he was aware of his status as a foreigner. His new companion shoved the bar owner aside and led the boy out, advising him, "He only wanted your money. Tangier differs from the rest of Africa. Every port has its own issues." The boy trusted his new ally, who had helped him escape a precarious predicament. Counting his funds, he considered their potential route to the pyramids, estimating that they could arrive by the next day. "I need to buy 2 camels," the other said, taking the money. They walked together through the narrow streets of Tangier, surrounded by vendors selling various wares. They arrived at the heart of a large plaza where the market was bustling with life. Thousands of people were engaged in arguments, sales, and purchases, with vegetables displayed alongside daggers and carpets interspersed with tobacco. The boy remained watchful of his new friend, conscious that all his money was with him. He contemplated asking for the cash back, but deemed it impolite. Unfamiliar with the customs of this strange land, he resolved to observe quietly, reminding himself of his own strength relative to his companion. Suddenly, amidst the bustling chaos, he spotted the most exquisite sword he had ever laid eyes on. The scabbard gleamed with silver embossed, and the handle was adorned with exquisite stones, though it remained unmarked. The boy vowed that upon his return from Egypt, he would purchase that sword from the stall owner. He then asked his friend about the sword's price, only to realize he had momentarily lost focus, entranced by the weapon's hard elegance. It felt as if his heart had suddenly tightened, and he hesitated to look away, knowing well what he might discover. He continued to admire the stunning sword until he found the bravery to glance back around. The market buzzed with shoppers mingling, and a medley of unfamiliar food aromas filled the air, yet he found no sign of his new companion. The boy wished to think that his friend had simply wandered away unintentionally. He decided to remain right where he was, waiting for his return. As he did, a priest ascended a nearby tower, and the marketplace fell to its knees, touching the ground as they began to chant. Like a colony of ants, the vendors dismantled their stalls and departed. The sun started its descent, and the boy observed its path until it vanished behind the white houses encircling the plaza. He remembered that on that very morning, he stood on another continent, a shepherd with 60 sheep, eagerly anticipating meeting a girl. That day, he felt he knew exactly what the future held as he walked through familiar fields, but now at sunset, he found himself in a foreign land, struggling with a language he couldn't comprehend. He was no longer a shepherd and possessed nothing, not even funds to return home and start anew. This transformation unfolded between sunrise and sunset, and he found himself feeling miserable, lamenting how his life had altered so suddenly and dramatically. Overwhelmed with shame, he felt tears welling up, an emotion he had never shown even in front of his sheep. The marketplace stood deserted, and he was far from home, drenched with feeling. He questioned why God could be so unjust, believing this was how divinity rewarded those who dared to pursue their dreams. When he tended his sheep, he was content, bringing joy to those around him. Now, he thought grimly that he felt sad and isolated, fearing that he might grow bitter and mistrustful of others due to one betrayal. He contemplated harboring resentment for those who had discovered their treasures when he never found his. He resolved to cling tightly to what little he possessed, convinced he was too insignificant to conquer the world. He opened his pouch to assess his belongings. Left behind were his belongings, perhaps a bit reminiscent of the sandwich. It was essential to know the ship, but all he discovered was a hefty book and the 2 stones the old man had gifted him. As he gazed at the stones, an unexplained sense of relief washed over him. He had traded 6 sheep for 2 valuable gems that had once adorned a gold breastplate. He could sell the stones to buy a return ticket, but this time he resolved to be wiser. The boy thought to himself as he removed them from the pouch, placing them securely in his pocket. This was a port town, and the only thing his friend had told him accurately was that port towns were rife with opportunity. Now, he comprehended why the bar owner had been so disturbed. He was attempting to warn him. He was reminded not to place his faith in the notion that, unlike others, I perceive reality solely based on my desires rather than what truly exists. He ran his fingers gently over the stones, gauging their warmth and texture. They were his treasures, objects that brought him comfort. They served as a reminder of the old man's words. When one fervently desires something, the universe aligns to assist in its attainment. He pondered the essence of this wisdom while standing in an empty market, devoid of recognition and uninfluenced by the night. Yet the stone stood as evidence of his encounter with the king, the ruler aware of the boy's journey. The king had urged him to learn to interpret signs, and so the boy returned the stones to the pouch, choosing to conduct an experiment. The old man had advised him to pose precise inquiries, requiring the boy to first grasp his true aspirations. Thus, he sought to determine if the old man's blessing continued to linger with him. He retrieved one stone and fervently inquired if he would indeed uncover his fortune. As he probed the pouch to locate another stone, both slipped through a breach and tumbled to the ground. The boy had never noticed a tear in his pouch before, but there they lay. He had intended to restore them to safety, yet the momentary sight of them on the ground sparked the notion to learn to recognize and eat omens, as the king had suggested. A smile crept across the boy's face as he picked up the 2 stones, placing them back into the pouch without a thought of repairing the hole. He understood that there were specific matters one should inquire about, ensuring not to stray from one's personal legend. He reassured himself of his commitment to make his own choices, but the stones reassured him that the old man was still with him, boosting his confidence. Scanning the empty plaza once more, he felt less despair. This wasn't an alien place, but instead a novel one. Ultimately, what he desired most was experience of new surroundings. Regardless of whether he reached the pyramids, he had already journeyed further than any shepherd he knew. Oh, if only they understood how dramatically different life was just 2 hours by ship from their current spot, he mused, even though his newfound world was merely an unoccupied marketplace, one he had previously witnessed overflowing with vitality. He knew he would never forget that memory. To reflect on things, but he had never encountered one unlike it before. He contemplated and understood he needed to decide whether to view himself as the unfortunate victim or as an adventurer seeking his own treasure island. He considered himself a treasure-seeking adventurer. He was jolted awake by someone, as he had dozed off in the marketplace, and the activity in the plaza was about to resume. As he surveyed the surroundings, he spotted a sheep and quickly recognized he was in a new world. Rather than feeling sorrowful, he felt joy. He no longer had to search for sustenance and water for the sheep, but could instead pursue his treasure. While he possessed no riches in his pocket, he was armed with faith. He had resolved the night before that he would embrace the role of an adventurer just like the ones he read about in books. He strolled towards a market where the merchants were setting up their stalls, and he assisted the candy seller in preparing his. The candy seller greeted him with a smile, clearly enthusiastic about the day's work ahead. This reminded the boy of the wise old man he had met, the mysterious king. The candy merchant crafted sweets to eventually enable his travels or to marry a shopkeeper's daughter, motivated by his own desires. The boy recognized he could follow the old man's path, regardless of how close or distant someone was to their personal legends. It was evident just by observing them. He thought about how he had never engaged in this before. Once the stall was ready, the candy seller offered the boy the first sweet of the day, which he gratefully accepted and went on his way. After walking a little distance, he realized that while setting up the stall, one merchant had spoken Arabic and the other Spanish. Yet they communicated seamlessly. There must be a language that transcends words, the boy pondered, recalling his past experiences with Margie and experiencing it again himself. He was gaining insights into various new concepts, many of which he had encountered before, but had never truly noticed. He hadn't acknowledged them due to his familiarity. He realized that if he could learn to grasp this wordless language, he could decipher the world around him. With a sense of calm and without haste, he decided he would navigate the narrow streets of Tangier. Only then could he interpret the omens that surrounded him. He understood that this would demand a great deal of patience, but shepherds are well versed in the virtue of patience. Once more, he found himself applying the same teachings in an unfamiliar land. The old man remarked that with the sheep, everything is interconnected. The crystal merchant awakened with the dawn, experiencing the same unease he felt each morning. He had been stationed in the same spot for 3 decades, at a shop perched on a sloping street, where few customers wandered by. Now, it was too late to alter his fate. The sole skill he had acquired was the buying and selling of crystal glassware. There had been a time when numerous customers frequented his store, including many merchants, French and English geologists, and well-off German soldiers. It had been a delightful experience to sell crystal, and he envisioned a future filled with wealth and stunning women by his side as he aged. However, as time went by, Tangier transformed. The neighboring city of Kuta expanded more rapidly than Tangier, and his business dwindled as neighbors departed, leaving only a handful of small shops on the hill. Noah was destined to ascend the hill merely to peruse those shops. Yet the crystal merchant felt trapped in his 30 years of trading crystal and believed it was too late to choose a new path. He spent the entire morning watching the rare movements in the street, having learned the routine of everyone who passed by over the years. Just before noon, a boy halted in front of the shop, dressed ordinarily, but the discerning gaze of the crystal merchant revealed that the boy lacked money. Nevertheless, the merchant opted to postpone his lunch for a few minutes as the boy lingered. A sign hanging in the doorway indicated that several languages were spoken in the shop. The boy noticed a man emerge from behind the counter. "I can clean the glasses in the window if you'd like," proposed the boy. "As they are now, no one will want to purchase them." The man regarded him in silence, prompting the boy to suggest, "In return, you could give me something to eat." Still, the man remained mute, and the boy understood that a decision was imminent. In his pouch, he carried his jacket, which he certainly would need in the desert. Extracting the jacket, he began to wipe the glasses. Within half an hour, he had cleaned all the glasses in the window, and as he worked, 2 customers entered the shop and purchased some crystal. Upon completing his task, he requested something to eat from the man. "Let's go have lunch," said the crystal merchant, placing a sign on the door before they headed to a nearby cafe. Once seated at the only table in the establishment, the crystal merchant chuckled, saying, "You didn't need to do any cleaning." The boy replied, "The Quran requires me to." "Why did you let me do it?" the boy inquired. "Because the crystal was unclean and both of us needed to rid our minds of negativity," the merchant replied. After they finished eating, the merchant addressed the boy. "I'd like you to assist in my shop. 2 customers arrived while you were working, and that's a positive sign. People often speak a lot about aiding the homeless, but they truly have little understanding. For years, I realized that I was communicating without words to my sheep. Do you wish to work for me?" The merchant continued, "I can put you to work for the remainder of the day." The boy retorted, "I'll labor all night until dawn, cleaning every crystal in your shop in return. I need funds to reach Egypt by tomorrow." The merchant remarked, "Even if you clean my crystals for a whole year and earned a solid commission for selling every piece, you would still have to borrow money for your journey to Egypt. There are thousands of kilometers of desert lying in between." A profound silence enveloped the moment, as if the city itself had entered a deep slumber. No sounds resonated from the bazaars, no disputes among merchants, no men scaling towers to call out, and no hope or adventure lingered. The essence of kings, personal legends, treasure, and pyramids faded away. The world appeared to hold its breath, leaving the boy's spirit staring blankly at the cafe door, wishing to fade away with a desire that everything would vanish. The merchant eyed the boy with concern. The joy witnessed that morning had abruptly vanished. "I can provide the funds you need to return to your homeland, my son," the crystal merchant stated. The boy remained silent, rose, adjusted his attire, and grabbed his pouch. "I will work for you," he said, followed by another lengthy silence. "However, I need money to purchase some sheep." Part 2. For nearly a month, the boy had been employed by the crystal merchant. It was clear that this was not the type of job that would bring him happiness. The merchant spent his days murmuring behind the counter, urging the boy to handle the pieces cautiously and avoid any breakage. Nevertheless, the position was acceptable as the merchant, despite his irritable nature, treated him fairly. The boy received a decent commission for each piece sold and managed to save a little money in the process. That morning, he performed some calculations. If he continued to work each day in the same manner, he would require an entire year to save enough to buy sheep. "Could you create a display case of the crystal?" the boy suggested to the merchant, referring to a piece he wanted to place outside, "and draw in individuals passing by at the foot of the hill." "I have never owned anything like that before," the merchant noted, as people moved above it, resulting in fragments becoming dislodged. "When I herded my sheep in the pasture, some might have perished if we had encountered them, but that's just how existence unfolds, including for shepherds." The merchant redirected his attention to a customer who had requested 3 crystal glasses he was selling more successfully than he ever had before, reminiscent of a time when the street was one of the top attractions a decade ago. "Business has genuinely improved," he told the boy after the patron departed. "I'm thriving more, and soon you'll be back in Hershey. Why seek more out of life?" "Because we must heed signs," the boy replied almost reflexively, regretting the remark as the merchant had never met the king. This concept is known as the principle of favorability or beginner's luck, suggesting that life wants you to realize your personal legends. The merchant perceived the significance of the boy's presence in the shop as an omen, and as time went by, With cash pouring into the drawer, he felt no remorse for hiring the boy, paying him more than his worth due to the market's assumption that sales would yield much for the boy at a high commission. He believed he would soon return to tending sheep. "Why are you so eager to reach the pyramids?" he asked, wanting to escape the business of display. "Because I've always longed to see them," the boy replied, omitting any mention of his dream. The treasure now felt like nothing more than a painful recollection that he tried not to dwell on. "I don't know anyone around here who would be inclined to traverse the desert simply to view the pyramids," the merchant remarked. "You could build a replica in your backyard with those stones." "You've never had aspirations of traveling?" the boy asked as he turned to serve a customer who was about to enter the shop. 2 days later, the merchant discussed the display with the boy. "I'm not fond of change," he stated. "You and I are different from that affluent merchant. If he makes an error in purchasing, it hardly impacts him, but we must live with our errors." "That's certainly true," the boy thought with a tinge of regret. "Assuming you believe we should proceed with the display, I want to return to tending my sheep more swiftly. We must capitalize on the fact that luck is in our favor and is equally inclined to aid you as it is aiding us. This is referred to as the principle of favorability or beginner's luck." The merchant paused for a moment in silence before stating that the prophet gave us the obligation of just 5 responsibilities to fulfill during our journey. The essence of life is to have faith solely in the one true God. Other significant practices include praying 5 times daily, fasting during Ramadan, and being generous towards those in need. As he spoke, tears welled in his eyes. He was a devoted man, and despite his impatience, he desired to lead his life in adherence to Islamic law. The boy inquired about the 5th obligation. The merchant responded 2 days prior that he had never envisioned embarking on a journey. He continued to explain that the 5th duty for every Muslim is to make a pilgrimage, a requirement to visit the holy city of Mecca at least once in a lifetime. Mecca is considerably farther than the pyramids. When he was younger, his sole ambition was to save enough money to open a shop. He believed that wealth would afford him the chance to reach Mecca. He began earning some income, yet he could never bring himself to entrust anyone with the shop, as the crystals required delicate handling. Concurrently, many people frequently passed by his store on their way to Mecca, some of whom were wealthy pilgrims traveling in caravans, accompanied by servants and camels. However, the majority of the pilgrims were impoverished. Those who traveled were joyful, and upon completing their pilgrimage, they marked their doors with symbols. One man, a cobbler who earned his living repairing boots, mentioned that he journeyed nearly a year across the desert. He worked diligently and walked the streets of Tangier with the hope of reaching Mecca. The boy now asked why the cobbler ventured there. The answer lay in the profound significance of Mecca that sustains him. It provides the strength to endure the monotonous days filled with silent crystals on the shelves and the same dreaded meals at the cafe. He feared that achieving his dream might leave him without purpose. "While you dream of your sheep and the pyramids, which are distinct from my aspirations, I only wish to envision Mecca's grandeur and the countless occurrences crossing the desert, reaching the sacred stone, and circling it 7 times before allowing myself to touch it. I have already imagined who would be beside me, those in front, and all the conversations and prayers exchanged. Yet, I worry that it might all become a routine, so I choose to only envision that day." The merchant allowed the boy to create the display, explaining that not everyone has the same opportunity to see their dreams materialize. 2 months rolled by, and the shelf attracted numerous customers to the crystal shop. The boy calculated that if he worked for another 6 months before return to Spain, and then continued to save for the next 60 days, in under a year, he could potentially double his flock. He was eager to engage in trade with Raps, as he had gained the ability to communicate in their unusual tongue. Since that day in the marketplace, he had completely abandoned the plan to return, for Egypt now felt as remote a fantasy to him as Mecca was to the merchant. Regardless, the boy found joy in his work and often reflected on the moment we landed, victorious. One must always be aware of their desires, and the boy was now clear on his goals, striving for treasures in a foreign land. He had doubled his flock without any expenditure, and he felt a sense of pride. He had acquired valuable insights into trading crystal, the unspoken language, and the significance of omens. One afternoon, he observed a man at the hilltop lamenting the difficulty in finding a decent drink. Accustomed to recognizing omens, the boy conversed with a merchant, who informed the visitors that they could offer crystal glasses that would enhance the enjoyment of tea and entice purchases. The merchant, who had claimed that beauty captivates men, remained silent. Later that day, after offering his prayers and closing the shop, he invited the boy to join him and share his peculiar pipe, a custom among the raps. "What is it that you seek?" the old merchant asked. "I've already mentioned that I must buy my sheep back, so I need to earn the money for that," responded the boy. The merchant inhaled deeply from his pipe and said, "Having operated this shop for 30 years, I can discern high-quality crystal from inferior, and I understand everything regarding crystal's properties. If we serve tea in crystal, the shop will grow, necessitating a shift in my lifestyle. Is that beneficial? I'm accustomed to how things are now. Before your arrival, I often pondered how much time I squandered in the same spot, while my peers either faced bankruptcy or prospered. This thought left me despondent. However, I now realize things haven't been as bad as they seemed. The shop is the exact size I envisioned. I'm reluctant to transform anything because I lack the skills to handle change. I prefer my current routine." The boy was at a loss for words. The old man continued, "You have been a true blessing to me today. I have come to comprehend something previously overlooked. Every ignored blessing eventually turns into a curse. I yearn for nothing more in life, yet you compel me to confront affluence and vistas previously unknown to me. Now that I have encountered these opportunities and recognized the vastness of my potential, I find myself feeling worse than I did prior to your presence. I am aware of the goals I ought to pursue, yet I am reluctant to embark on that path." It was wise of me to hold back my words from the baker. And Teresa thought to himself as they continued to smoke the pipe while the sun dipped below the horizon. They engaged in Arabic conversation, and the boy felt a sense of pride in his ability to communicate in that language. A fleeting notion crossed his mind, that if she could impart all the necessary knowledge of the world, she would, but they could never reveal to him the likely lessons the sheep could teach him. The boy regarded the old merchant, pondering that their primary aim was merely to seek sustenance and water. Perhaps it wasn't about them instructing me, but rather me gaining insights from them. Finally, the merchant spoke to the boy, conveying that understanding such a concept required one to be born into it. In simpler terms, it translates to something akin to "it is written." While he tended to the coals, the merchant told the boy he could start to serve in the crystal glasses. At times, one cannot restrain the flow of a river. They ascended the hill, weary by the time they arrived at the summit, but were met with a crystal shop offering invigorating mint tea. They entered to partake, and the tea was presented in exquisite crystal glasses. My wife never envisioned this set. It was purchased for hosting guests that evening, who would surely be captivated by the elegance of the glassware. Another remarked that the tea always tasted better when served in crystal, as it preserved the aroma. A third mentioned it was customary in the East to use crystal glasses for tea due to their mystical properties. Before long, word spread, and many began to ascend the hill to visit the shop that was reviving an age-old trade. Other establishments sold tea in crystal as well, but they were not situated atop a hill and saw little patronage. Ultimately, the merchant found it necessary to hire 2 additional employees, as he began to import vast amount of tea, and his crystal shop became a destination for those eager for new experiences. Thus, the months went by. The boy woke before dawn. It had been 11 months and 9 days since he last set foot on the African continent. He donned his Arabian attire. On this particular day, he donned white linen, but especially a headcloth secured with a ring crafted from camel skin. Slipping into his new sandals, he descended the stairs quietly while the city remained in slumber. He prepared a sandwich and poured himself hot tea from a crystal glass, then settled in the sunlit doorway to smoke in silence, with thoughts at a standstill as he listened to the wind carrying whispers from the heart of the desert. Once he finished his cigarette, he reached into his pocket, pausing for a moment to examine what he had pulled out. It was a bundle of money sufficient to purchase his flock and secure a license for importing African goods into his own land. He waited patiently for the merchant to arrive and open his shop, and then they ventured off together for more tea. "I am departing today," the boy announced. "I possess the funds to buy my sheep, and you have the means to journey to Mecca." The old man remained silent. "Will you grant me your blessing?" inquired the boy. "You have aided me." The man continued preparing his tea without responding. Finally, he turned to the boy, stating, "I am proud of you. You have infused new life into my crystal shop. Yet, you are aware that I won't be going to Mecca, just as you realize you will not buy your sheep." "Who told you that?" the startled boy asked. The old crystal merchant smiled and bestowed the boy his blessing. The boy entered his room and started gathering his things as he felt 3 sacks. While departing, he noticed an old shepherd's pouch tucked away in the corner, something he hadn't considered for ages. As he removed his jacket from the pouch to possibly give to someone on the street, 2 stones fell to the floor with a clink, prompting memories of the old king and making him realize how long it had been since he thought of him. For nearly a year, he had been tirelessly focused on saving money to return to Spain with dignity, all while keeping his dreams alive. The old king had taught him to heed the omens. The boy picked up the stones again and felt that same peculiar presence of the old king close by. He had worked hard for a whole year, and the signs indicated it was time for him to depart. "I think I will return to my previous life," the boy mused, reflecting on how the sheep had taught him Arabic, yet they imparted something even more vital: the universal language understood by all. This was a language of passion, of achievements rooted in love and intention, a key component in the pursuit of something truly meaningful. He no longer found the city intimidating, feeling that he could conquer the world just as he had mastered this place. The old king had declared that when you desire something intensely, the universe aligns to assist you in achieving it. However, the old king had failed to mention anything about being stuck, about endless deserts, or about individuals who are aware of their dreams yet hesitate to bring them to life. He hadn't advised that the pyramids were merely heaps of stones or that anyone could construct one in their backyard, nor had he mentioned that once you acquire enough funds to expand beyond your previous flock, you should do so. The boy gathered the pouch with his belongings, made his way downstairs, and encountered the merchant attending to a foreign couple, while 2 other patrons leisurely sipped tea from crystal glasses. It was more bustling than usual for that early hour. From his vantage point, the merchant's hair resembled that of the old king. He recalled the smile of the candy seller on his initial day in Tangier, when he had no food and nowhere to turn. That smile, too, had mirrored the old king's, as if it left an indelible impression. And yet none of these individuals has ever encountered the elderly monarch who claimed he consistently appeared to assist those pursuing their personal legends. You departed without bidding farewell to the crystal merchant, as he wished to avoid shedding tears among those who would miss the place and all the valuable lessons it offered. He felt an increased sense of self-assurance and believed he could take on the world. However, he remarked that he would return to familiar fields to look after his flock again, stating this with assurance. Yet, he found no joy in that choice anymore, having dedicated a full year fulfilling a dream that, with each passing moment, seemed less significant. Perhaps it was not truly a dream at all. Who can say? Maybe it's preferable to live like the crystal merchant, never venturing to Mecca but rather traversing life with aspirations. He contemplated once more, attempting to reassure himself, and as he clasped the crystal that had been bestowed upon him, he felt the old king's strength and determination flow through him. Serendipity, or perhaps an omen, crossed his mind when he arrived at the bar. On his initial day there, the thief was absent, and the establishment's owner served him a cup of tea. "I can revert to being a shepherd at any time," he thought, reminding himself he had learned how to tend a sheep and had not forgotten those skills. Yet, he wondered if he would ever have another opportunity to visit the pyramids in Egypt. The old man wore a breastplate of gold and seemed to understand his background. He truly was a wise king. The hills of Andalusia lay just 2 hours away, but an entire desert stood between him and the pyramids. Still, the boy perceived his circumstance differently. He was actually 2 hours closer to his treasure. The 2 hours that had stretched into a whole year were inconsequential. I know I want to return to my flock, he thought. I recognize this isn't a dilemma anymore. They can remain good companions. On the other hand, he questioned whether the desert could be a friend, but it was there that he needed to seek his treasure. If he did not discover it, he could always return home. He finally had sufficient funds and all the time he required. Why not? Suddenly, he felt an overwhelming surge of joy. He could always revert to shepherding or even become a crystal merchant again. Perhaps the world contained other hidden treasures, but he had a dream, and his encounter with the king was not something that just occurred to anyone. As he departed the bar, he recollected that one of the crystal merchant suppliers transported his crystals via caravans that traversed the desert. The agreement was clasped tightly in his grasp due to those 2 stones, and he found himself once again on the path to his treasure. I am perpetually present whenever someone seeks to fulfill their personal legend, the old king remarked, discussing the cost of venturing to supplier's warehouse to verify whether the parents were indeed that distant. The Englishman rested on a bench within a structure that reeked of animal sweat and dust. It was a hybrid of a warehouse and a corral. He had never imagined finding himself in a location like this, believing he would be immersed in the pages of a scholarly journal continuing at the university. Yet here, he was in a corral. Nevertheless, he had to press forward. He held a lifelong belief in omens, directing all his studies toward uncovering the universe's singular true language. His journey began with Esperanto, then progressed to the world's religions, and now he delved into alchemy. He was capable of conversing in Esperanto and had a solid grasp of all significant faiths, but he had yet to achieve the status of an alchemist. He had unraveled truths behind critical queries, yet his studies had reached a plateau that he could not surpass. He attempted in vain to forge a connection with an alchemist, but they were peculiar individuals who primarily concerned themselves with personal interests and almost always denied him assistance. Perhaps their inability to uncover the secret of the masterwork, the philosopher's stone, caused them to hoard their knowledge. He had often been relying on the fortune left to him by his father in his unfruitful quest for philosopher's stone. Countless hours had been spent in the vast libraries of the world, acquiring the rarest and most significant texts on alchemy. One volume he encountered many years ago featured a renowned Arabian alchemist who claimed to have unearthed the philosopher's stone and the elixir of life at the remarkable age of over 200 years. The Englishman was deeply moved by the tale, but had never considered it more than a mere story. However, a friend returning from an archaeological expedition in the desert relayed that there was an individual who possessed extraordinary abilities. This person resided in an oasis, his friend claimed, and people whispered that he, too, was 200 years old and could transmute any metal into gold. The Englishman struggled to suppress his enthusiasm. He canceled all his commitments and gathered his most essential books. As he sat within the dusty-smelling warehouse, preparations were made for caravans destined to cross the Sahara. He was determined to locate that elusive alchemist, he thought, as the scent of the animals became slightly more bearable. A young traveler, also burdened with baggage, entered and greeted the Englishman. "Where are you headed?" asked the young traveler. "Into the desert," he replied. The man responded, returning to his reading, clearly uninterested in any dialogue at that moment. What was essential for him was to reflect on everything he had absorbed over the years, as the alchemist would likely challenge him. A young rabbit extracted a book and commenced reading. The text was in Spanish. That's a valid consideration. English speakers often handle Spanish better than Arabic, and if this was going to be a significant volume, it could become a worthwhile discussion partner when other important tasks were absent. "Strange," the boy remarked, attempting once more to focus on the burial scene that opened the book. For 2 years, he had been trying to navigate the initial pages of this book. Yet even without a king present to interrupt him, concentration eluded him. He still held uncertainties about the choices he had made, but he realized one fundamental truth. Making a decision served only as the starting point. When a person commits to something, it feels like plunging into a powerful current that sweeps them to destinations they never envisioned when they first chose their path. Reflecting back, when he made the choice to pursue his treasure, he never anticipated it would lead him to a crystal shop. He pondered that although the decision to board this caravan was his own, where it would ultimately take him remained a mystery. Nearby, the Englishman perused a book. He appeared unapproachable, even somewhat annoyed when the boy had walked in. They might have struck up a friendship, but the Englishman dismissed any opportunity for conversation. The boy shut his book, feeling reluctant to do anything that might cause him to resemble the Englishman. He pulled out a small object from his pocket and started playing with it until the stranger called out. In a swift movement, he returned the object to his pocket. "They're not for sale," he stated. The Englishman replied, "That amount is quite trivial. They are merely rock crystals." He continued, "There are countless rock crystals, but those who are knowledgeable would recognize that these are from this region." "They were gifted to me," the boy responded. The stranger didn't reply right away. Instead, he reached into his pocket and produced 2 stones identical to the boy's. "Did you mention a king?" he inquired. "I suppose you don't think a king would converse with someone like me, a shepherd?" He wanted to end the discussion there. Not all shepherds are overlooked. Some are the first to acknowledge truths that the rest of the world refuses to see. So it's plausible that a king might speak with shepherds. He continued, uncertain whether the boy would grasp his points. "This is in the Bible, the same book that enlightened me about the sacred stones, which are the only means of divination. Authorized by God, the priest carries them within a golden breastplate, and he was undoubtedly pleased to be present at the warehouse. Perhaps this signifies an omen. The Englishmen have informed you about omens." The boy's curiosity intensified with each passing moment, as everything within life is known to a group of Englishmen. Now, while shutting the journal he'd been reading, he reflected on a universal language familiar to all but long forgotten. "I am on a quest to discover that universal language, among other pursuits, and that's the reason for my presence here. I must locate an individual versed in that universal language." The alchemist's dialogue was cut short by the warehouse bell. "You're fortunate," said a representative. "This caravan departs today for Alvalon, but I'm bound for Egypt," the boy remarked. "Alvalon lies within Egypt," the representative noted. "Best of luck," the Englishman commented, once the representative had exited. "If I could compile an extensive encyclopedia solely about the concept of luck and coincidence, it would be expressed through those terms." He conveyed to the boy that their meeting was not mere chance. Holding the Book of Omens, he inquired if the boy was also pursuing the alchemist. "I seek a treasure," said the boy, instantly wishing he hadn't shared that detail. Yet the Englishman seemed unfazed. "I don't even know what alchemy is," the boy was about to say when the warehouse bell beckoned him to step outside. The caravan's leader, a dark, bearded man, asserted that he held dominion over life and death for all travelers. "The desert is a fickle mistress, and at times it drives me to madness," he declared. Nearly 200 people had assembled, accompanied by 400 animals, including camels, horses, mules, and poultry. Among the crowd were women, children, and several men tightening their belts and slinging rifles over their shoulders. The Englishman was burdened with multiple suitcases packed with books, creating a cacophony that necessitated the leader to repeat himself repeatedly for clarity. "There are various individuals here, each worshiping their own deity, but I solely serve the law. In his name, I vow to exert all effort once more to conquer the desert. However, I require each of you to pledge by the God you revere that you will adhere to my commands without fail, for in the desert, insubordination can be fatal." A quiet hum arose from the crowd, each individual making their vow to their respective God. The boy quietly offered his allegiance to Jesus Christ, while the Englishman remained silent, and the murmuring persisted longer than a mere word would have. The group was also entreating the heavens for assistance. The sounding of protection note echoed through the air as the bugle played, prompting everyone to mount their camels. The boy observed that the Englishman had brought his own camel and awkwardly climbed aboard. Feeling a pang of sympathy for the Englishman, the boy noted how the creature was burdened with heavy cases of books. "There is no such thing as coincidence," remarked the Englishman, attempting to strike up a conversation, though his words were cut short in the bustling warehouse. "I'm here because a friend of mine is in red," he continued, "but the caravan soon began to move, making it difficult for the boy to hear the rest of the Englishman's thoughts. The boy anticipated an explanation about the enigmatic connection linking events. The same connection that led him to become a shepherd, sparked his recurring dream, and guided him to Africa in search of a king, culminating in his encounter with the crystal merchant. He realized that as one draws close to fulfilling their personal legend, that legend crystallizes into their genuine purpose. The caravan journeyed eastward, traversing the desert under the midday sun, and then continuing in the late afternoon. The boy engaged in minimal conversation with the Englishman, who was engrossed in his books, opting instead to silently watch the movement of the animals and people across the vast desert. This scene starkly contrasted with the chaotic departure he witnessed when David had set out. Back then, there had been confusion, shouts, and excited cries of children mingling with the frantic commands of guides and merchants. Now, in the desert, only the relentless wind and the footsteps of the animals broke the silence. The guide spoke sparingly as they traversed the sand, yet on one occasion, a camel driver remarked, "The desert is immense, and the distant horizon makes a person feel small, urging silence." The boy intuitively grasped the sentiment. Despite never having been to the desert, he recalled how the sight of the sea or a fire often left him speechless, awed by such elemental forces. He thought about the lessons he'd learned from the sheet and the knowledge gained from crystal, contemplating that the desert, too, seemed ancient and wise. The wind was unceasing. Evoking memories of the day he sat at the fort in Teresa, with the same breeze brushing against his face, reminiscent of the solace found in his former life on the sheep farm in Andalusia, where they consistently searched for food and water. "Those aren't my sheep anymore," he told himself, devoid of nostalgia. "They've likely grown accustomed to their new shepherd and may have already forgotten me." He found comfort in the notion that creatures like sheep, familiar with travel, inherently understand the importance of moving on. Thoughts of the merchant's daughter crossed his mind, and he felt certain she had likely married, perhaps to a baker or someone else entirely. To another shepherd who could read and tell her thrilling tales, as he likely wasn't the only one. His intuitive grasp of the camel drivers thrilled him. Perhaps he was also discovering the universal language that encompasses the past and present of humanity. His mother referred to it as hunches. The boy began to realize that intuition represents a sudden immersion into the universal current of life, indicating that the histories of all individuals are intertwined, allowing us to comprehend everything since it is all documented. Maktoum, the boy recalled, thinking of the crystal merchant. The desert was challenging, with some terrains rugged and others obstructed by boulders requiring a diversion. In the presence of large rocky areas, significant detours were necessary. When the sand was too fine, the animals struggled with their loads and sought refuge. In certain spots, the ground was encrusted with salt, and both the animals and caravan drivers had to dismount and relieve their burdens. The drivers maneuvered through such risky terrains before reloading their camels. If God were to fall ill or perish, the camel drivers would draw lots to select a successor. Yet, all of this transpired for a singular fundamental reason. Despite the numerous detours and modifications, the caravan consistently progressed toward the same compass point. Once obstacles were surmounted, it returned to its trajectory, focused on a star that signified the oasis's location. When people spotted the star gleaming in the morning sky, they understood they remained on the correct path toward the water, long trees, and fellow travelers. Only the Englishman seemed oblivious to all this, largely absorbed in his books. The boy owned a book too, attempting to read it during the initial days of the journey, but he found it far more captivating to observe the caravan and heed the whispers of the wind. Once he learned to bond with his camel, he discarded the book. The boy had come to hold a superstition that every time he opened it, he would uncover something vital. Therefore, he deemed it an unnecessary weight. He grew close to the camel driver, traveling beside him at night as they gathered around the fire. The boy shared tales of his experiences as a shepherd, and during these exchanges, the driver recounted his own life. "I used to live near Elkhart," he said. "I had my orchard, my children, and a life that would remain unchanged until my end. One year, when the harvest was outstanding, I felt it was time to fulfill the only obligation I hadn't addressed in my life, allowing me to die content. One day, The ground started to shake, and the Nile breached its banks. This was a calamity I believed only befell others, never me. My neighbors were anxious about losing their olive trees to the deluge, and my wife feared for the safety of our children. I was convinced that all my possessions would be obliterated. Our land lay in ruin, and I had to find alternative means to sustain myself. Consequently, I became a camel driver. That catastrophe enlightened me to Allah's will. People need not be daunted by the unknown, for they are capable of attaining their desires and necessities. We often fear losing what we possess, our lives, belongings, and property. But that fear dissipates when we grasp that our life stories are collectively inscribed by the same hand. Occasionally, our caravan would encounter another, often possessing what we needed, as if everything were truly scripted by one divine hand. Gathered around the fire, the camel drivers would share insights about sandstorms and recount tales of the desert. At times, enigmatic hooded figures would emerge. These were watchmen surveilling the caravan paths, alerting us to the threats posed by nearby savage tribes clad in black, revealing only their eyes. One night, a camel driver approached the fire in the company of Englishmen. The air carried rumors of tribal conflicts. The trio fell into a silence as the boy observed an unmistakable tension despite the absence of words, experiencing that wordless language, the universal dialect. The Englishman inquired if they faced peril. The camel driver replied, "Once you enter the desert, retreat is impossible," emphasizing that when one can't turn back, their focus must solely rest on the most effective route ahead, with the remainder left to Allah, including any perils. He finished with a curt reminder to heed the caravan closely. After the camel driver departed, the boy remarked to the Englishman that although they often took detours, they were always aiming for the same goal. The Englishman then expressed a desire to delve deeper into the world, stating that books are akin to caravans in that sense. The group of travelers began to move more swiftly, and while the camp had previously been quiet, even the nights when tribes would usually converse around the fires transformed into vibrancy. Eventually, the caravan leader decided to extinguish the fire to avoid drawing attention, and the travelers adopted this practice. Arranging the animals into a circle at night, resting together in the center serves as a means of protection against nocturnal threats, with the leader assigning armed sentinels around the perimeter. One night, the Englishman was able to sleep and summoned the boy for a stroll along the dunes enveloping the camp. Beneath a full moon, the boy recounted his life story, captivating the Englishman, particularly with the advancements made at the shop since the boy started working there. "That's the essence that governs everything," he remarked. "In alchemy, it's referred to as the soul of the world. When you yearn for something with your whole heart, you are nearest to the soul of the world, which is always a positive force." He also noted that this gift is not exclusive to humans. Everything on earth possesses a soul, whether it be mineral, vegetable, or animal, and even simple thoughts have their essence. Continuous transformation is inherent to all life on earth because it is alive and holds a soul of which we are part. This often goes unnoticed, yet in the crystal shop, one might observe that even the classes contribute to your success. The boy pondered these thoughts while gazing at the moonlit sands and watching the caravans traverse the desert. "The caravans in the desert communicate in the same language," he stated. "That's why the desert permits their passage. It will challenge each caravan at every turn to assess its timing. If we succeed, we shall reach the oasis. Undertaking this journey based solely on mere bravery, without understanding that language, would make our travel significantly harder." They stood together, gazing at the moon. "There are magic moments," the boy remarked. "I've watched how the men interpret the signs of the desert and how the soul of the caravan converses with the soul of the desert." The Englishman replied, "I ought to pay closer attention to the caravan," while the boy added, "and I should read your books." Though they presented strange content, discussing Mercury, salt dragons, and kings, he found himself puzzled. Yet, one recurring idea resonated throughout these texts. All things are manifestations of a singular essence. He recalled that one of the books revealed that the most crucial text in alchemical literature was succinct, consisting of only a few lines etched onto an emerald surface. That is the emerald tablet, the Englishman asserted. Please, he could impart knowledge to the boy. Then, why we need all these books? The boy inquired. So we can comprehend those few lines, the Englishman replied, though he did not seem entirely convinced by his own words. The book that captivated the boy recounted the tales of renowned alchemists who devoted their entire lives to refining metals. These men believed that through prolonged heating, a metal could shed all its distinct properties, leaving behind what they referred to as the soul of the world. This essence granted them the ability to comprehend anything in existence, as it served as a universal language connecting all things. They termed this revelation the masterwork, which consisted of both liquid and solid elements. Do you simply observe men and signs to grasp this language? The boy inquired. You have quite a knack for simplifying everything, responded the Englishman, expressing frustration that alchemy is a rigorous practice where every detail must be adhered to precisely as taught by the masters. The boy discovered that the fluid aspect of the grand work was referred to as the elixir of life, which had the power to heal all ailments and also prevented aging. The solid component was known as the philosopher's stone. Finding the philosopher's stone is no simple task, the Englishman remarked, explaining that the alchemist had spent years laboring in laboratories, studying the flames. In that time near the fire, he gradually relinquished worldly desires, realizing that refining metals also brought about the refinement of the self. The boy recalled what the crystal merchant had said, that cleaning the crystal objects allowed him to liberate himself from negative thoughts. This made the boy increasingly convinced that elements of alchemy could be integrated into everyday existence. Additionally, the Englishman stated that the philosopher's stone possessed an intriguing characteristic. Even a small fragment could change vast amount of metal into gold. Inspired by this, the boy mused that perhaps with a little patience, he too could convert everything into gold. He explored the lives of various individuals who had achieved such transformations. Each narrative, Elias, Fulton, Elliot, and Jever, was captivating. All pursued their personal legends, traveled, conversed with wise figures, performed astonishing feats, and possessed the philosopher's stone along with the elixir of life. When the boy sought to uncover how to create the masterwork, he found himself utterly confounded by merely sketches, coded guidelines, and cryptic writings. Why do they complicate things so? He queried the Englishman one evening, noticing the man was irritable and yearned for his books. The Englishman replied, stating that the responsibility of understanding falls on the shoulders of the diligent, explaining that if everyone could easily turn base metal into gold, gold itself would lose its worth. It is only those who demonstrate perseverance and a willingness to delve deeply into their studies that can attain the masterwork, thus justify his presence in the desert in search of a true alchemist who could assist him in unraveling the enigma. The boy then asked about the age of these texts, to which the Englishman responded that they were written many centuries prior, long before the invention of the printing press. The boy countered that it would have been impossible for all to know of alchemy, questioning why such peculiar language and numerous illustrations were utilized. The Englishman didn't reply directly, choosing instead to mention that he had been observing how the caravan operated for several days, remarking that despite his observation, he had not gleaned any new insights. He noted the increasing chatter about warfare, and one day when the boy returned the books to the Englishman, the man inquired if he had learned anything. "You may be the one with the insight," the boy replied. "I was in need of someone to converse with, as a distraction from the looming threat of war. I discovered that the world possesses a spirit, and that those who grasp the spirit can also comprehend the essence of existence. I found out that numerous optimists have realized their own personal destinies, and in doing so, uncovered the world's soul, the philosopher's stone, and the elixir of life. Most importantly, I learned that these concepts are straightforward enough to be inscribed on the surface of something." The English traveler felt disheartened, for the employment of thematic symbols, obscure terminology, and lab apparatus had failed to leave an imprint on the boy's spirit. It must be too unsophisticated to appreciate such elements. There was no need to retrieve his books. He simply stowed them away again in their cases and resumed observing the caravan. He expressed that nothing was imparted to him by that encounter. The boy returned to reflecting upon the stillness of the desert and the grains of sand stirred by creatures. Each individual possesses a distinct approach to acquiring knowledge, He mused. His method differs from mine, and mine doesn't align with his. Yet we are both pursuing our personal legends, and I honor him for that. The caravan continued its journey day and night. The cloaked Bedouins appeared more frequently. The camel driver became a reliable friend, sharing with the boy that the tribal conflict had already commenced and that the caravan would be fortunate to reach the oasis. The animals were weary, and conversations among the men diminished progressively. The silence became the most unsettling aspect of night. The mere groan of a camel, once a trivial sound, now incited fear, as it could indicate danger. Nevertheless, the camel driver appeared relatively unconcerned. He offered the boy some dates and said, "The bread of life is just that. One night without fires and without movement, nothing more. I believe if I am on the move, I should focus solely on moving. If I have to engage in battle, then so be it. It's as good a day to meet my end as any other. I do not dwell on my past or my future. My interest lies solely in the present. By consistently concentrating on the now, you will find happiness. You will realize that life exists in the desert, that stars fill the skies, and that tribesmen engage in warfare because they are part humanity. Life will become a celebration for you, a grand festival, because life is about embracing the moment we are living right now." 2 nights later, while preparing to settle down beneath the stars they followed each night, he noted that the horizon appeared slightly lower than before, as if he could see more stars. The desert itself serves as a sanctuary, prompting the camel driver to make his way there immediately, as the boy inquired. The boy had stirred awake with the sunrise, and before him lay the remnants of a small star that had shone the night prior, alongside an infinite expanse of sand extending across the desert. "We have accomplished it," the Englishman claimed, rising early as well. The boy remained silent, at peace amidst the desert's tranquility, simply absorbing the sight of the trees. He still faced a considerable journey to reach the pyramids, and one day this morning would fade into memory. Yet it was the present that mattered. The camel driver had expressed his desire to live in the moment, embracing lessons from the past and aspirations for the future. The vision of the date palms would eventually also become a mere recollection, but at that moment, they represented shade, water, and a sanctuary from yesterday's turmoil. The camels had groaned, signaling possible danger, while the homes they passed could herald a miracle. The world converses in countless languages as time rushed forward, accompanied by the caravans. Observing the numerous people and animals arriving at the oasis, the alchemist noted the excited shouts greeting the newcomers. Dust shrouded the desert, and the children of the oasis radiated joy at the presence of strangers. The alchemist watched as the tribal sheiks engaged in lengthy discussions with the caravan's leader, yet none of that held significance for him. He had witnessed many visitors before, observing that despite the changing dunes shaped by the wind, the sands remained constant, familiar since childhood. He always took pleasure in witnessing the delight travelers expressed upon discovering the greenery of the date palms after weeks of desolate yellow sand and azure skies. Perhaps the desert was crafted by God so humanity could better appreciate the lush trees, he mused. He chose to focus on more pragmatic matters. Within the caravan was a man who could impart some of the secrets, as the omens had indicated. Although he was unfamiliar with the man, he practiced recognizing him when he appeared, hoping he would be as inescapable as his previous apprentice. The thought crossed his mind regarding why such knowledge must be shared to the language of the world. It wasn't precisely that these were secrets. God readily unveils his secrets to all creatures. He attributed this to the necessity of transmission occurring this way, as they were comprised of pure life, a form of existence that cannot be encapsulated in images or words. People tend to become absorbed in pictures and words, consequently losing sight of the true essence. The boy was astonished by what he was witnessing. The oasis, rather than being merely a well flanked by palm trees like he recalled from a geography textbook, was a sprawling expanse that surpassed many towns he had known in Spain. It boasted 300 wells, 50,000 palm trees, and a multitude of colorful tents dotting the landscape. The scene resembled something out of the tales of the 1,001 Nights, which made the Englishman eager to meet the alchemist. Surrounding this oasis were children with serious expressions, observing the animals and newcomers arriving. The center of the oasis was filled with inquiries about skirmishes, while women vied for access to the cloth and gemstones being brought in. The once tranquil silence of the desert felt like a distant memory as the travelers in the caravan chattered away, laughing and shouting, as though they had just re-entered the realm of humanity after a spiritual journey. They felt relieved and joyous, having exercised caution in the desert. However, the camel driver explained to the boy that oases were generally regarded as neutral zones because most residents tended to be women and children. Such safe havens existed throughout the desert, allowing tribesmen to engage in battles while the oases remained sanctuaries. With some effort, the caravan leader gathered his crew and provided them with directions. The group would remain in the oasis until the tribal conflict subsided, sharing the living space with the local inhabitants and receiving the finest accommodations, as per the customary laws of hospitality. He requested that everyone, including his own sentinels, surrender their weapons to the men designated by the tribal chiefs, adhering to the established rules of warfare. The leader clarified that oases should not harbor armies or troops. To the boy's amazement, the Englishman withdrew a chrome-plated revolver from his bag and handed it to the arms collectors. "This revolver helped me trust people," the Englishman remarked. Meanwhile, the boy reflected on his treasure. The closer he drew to his dream, the more challenging the journey became. It felt as though the beginner's luck, as described by the old king, was no longer aiding him. His pursuit of the dream was a continual test of his perseverance and bravery. He realized that he must not act hastily or with impatience. If he charged ahead recklessly without noticing the signs that God placed on his path, he could miss crucial guidance. Up until that point, he had thought of omens as ordinary aspects of life, akin to eating, sleeping, or seeking love, and he had never considered them as divine messages directing his actions. Impatiently, he reminded himself of what the camel driver said. When it's time to move, it's time to move. On that first day, everyone, including the Englishman, succumbed to fatigue and slept, though he was assigned a tent far from his companion, sharing the space with 5 young men his age. These desert dwellers eagerly listened to his tales of the grand cities. The boy was ready to share his experiences from the crystal shop when the Englishman entered the tent, having been searching for him all morning. He stated that he needed assistance in locating the alchemist. Initially, the boy considered attempting to find the alchemist alone, recognizing that the person likely lived differently than others in the oasis. It seemed probable that his dwelling was alongside a fire that continuously burned. They searched tirelessly, realizing that the oasis was far larger than he had anticipated. There were countless tents. "We've nearly wasted the whole day," lamented the Englishman as he sat by one of the wells. "Perhaps we should inquire of someone," suggested the boy, hesitant to disclose the reason for his visit to the oasis. The Englishman struggled to decide, but ultimately concurred, acknowledging that the boy's Arabic was superior. The boy approached a woman who was filling a goat skin with water at the well. "Good afternoon, ma'am. Could you tell me if the alchemist resides here in the oasis?" The woman replied, saying she had never heard of such a person, and hurried off. Before leaving, she cautioned the boy against conversing with women in black, as they were likely married and adhering to tradition. Disheartened, he felt that his arduous journey might have been in vain. The boy was also saddened to see that his friend was chasing his personal legend, and that those who pursue such a path receive support from the universe, as the old king had indicated. He couldn't have been mistaken, and what if nobody here knows about him? The boy pondered. His eyes lit up at the thought that perhaps the people in this oasis were unfamiliar with alchemists. He then began to ask about who cures the people's ailments. Several women clad in black approached the well for water, yet the boy was too shy to speak to them. Despite the Englishman encouraging him to ask a man nearby, the boy inquired, "Do you know someone who can heal people's illnesses?" The man, clearly intimidated by the strangers, asked if they were seeking a doctor. He recited some verses from the Quran, and soon another man appeared. The older man was holding a small item while the boy continuously asked why he sought such a person. They had journeyed for months, driven by the boy's failures. The boy asserted that if the manner of seeking such an individual was like his, Then he must possess considerable power. The old man pondered for a few moments and replied that not even tribal chiefs could meet him at will. It only happened at his discretion. He advised waiting for the war's conclusion before departing with the caravan, urging caution not to intrude upon the oasis's life. Then he turned away. Meanwhile, the Englishman was thrilled, believing they were finally on the correct path. At that point, a young woman who wore no black approached. She was Fatima, carrying a container on her shoulder, her head veiled, yet her face was bare. The boy stepped forward to inquire about the alchemist. At that instant, time seemed to halt, and he felt a profound connection to the world while gazing into her dark eyes, noting that her lips were caught between laughter and silence. He discovered the essential element of a universal language spoken by all: love. It was something primordial, older than humanity and more ancient than the vast desert, an energy that manifested whenever two gazes intertwined at the well. Her smile was an unmistakable omen he had long awaited, though he hadn't realized it until that moment in his life. He had devoted himself to finding meaning in his sheep, books, and the desert signs, and now he understood the world's pure language, which required no interpretation, akin to the universe's journey. In that moment, he felt he was in the presence of the singular woman in his life, and without any need for verbal communication, she acknowledged the same truth. He was more certain of this than of anything else. He had been advised by his family to pursue love and truly know someone before committing, yet many had never grasped the universal language. Once you comprehend that language, it becomes apparent that someone in the world awaits you, whether you are in the heart of the desert or a bustling city. When such souls encounter each other and lock eyes, the significance of past and future fades. All that exists is a present moment, accompanied by a profound certainty that everything under the sun has been penned by a singular hand. This hand inspires love and molds a kindred spirit for every individual on earth. Without love, dreams will forever remain unfulfilled. No significance to the boy, the Englishman shook him gently and urged him to come closer. The boy approached the girl, and upon seeing her smile, mirrored her expression. "What is your name?" he inquired. "Fatima," replied the girl, her gaze averted. "In my country, some women are given that name. It belongs to the daughter of the prophet," Fatima explained, speaking with pride about how the invaders spread the name everywhere. The Englishman encouraged the boy to ask her about a man rumored to heal ailments, one believed to know all the secrets of the universe. "He communicates with the desert genies, both benevolent and malevolent," she elaborated, pointing southward, indicating where the enigmatic man resided. She then filled a vessel with water and departed, leaving the Englishman to seek the alchemist. The boy lingered by the well, recalling how a mere scent once carried the essence of that woman, realizing he had loved her long before he knew of her existence. He understood that this love would drive him to uncover every treasure in the world. The following day, he returned to the well, hoping to see the girl again. To his astonishment, the Englishman was there, gazing out over the desert. "I waited all afternoon and into the evening," he mentioned. He appeared with the first stars. I shared my quest with him and asked if I had ever managed to turn lead into gold. I replied that this was precisely what had brought me here. He instructed me to attempt it. That was all he said. Trying again, the boy remained silent, feeling sympathy for the Englishman who had traveled so far only to receive that same advice once more. "I will try," the boy announced to the Englishman. "I'm beginning now." Just as the Englishman departed, Fatima arrived with her filled vessel of water. The boy declared, "I wish for you to be my wife." "I love you." The girl dropped her container, allowing the water to spill. "I will wait for you here every day. I have traversed the desert searching for a treasure that lies near the pyramids, and what once felt like a curse has become a blessing, because it led me to you." "The war will eventually cease," the girl replied. The boy surveyed his surroundings, reminding himself of his past as a shepherd and acknowledging he could return to that life. Fatima held greater significance than any treasure could offer. "The tribesmen are always on a quest for treasure," she observed, as though guessing his thoughts, "while the women of the desert take pride in their tribesmen." She refilled her vessel once more and departed, leaving the boy to ponder. Every day, he visited Fatima, sharing stories about his experiences as a shepherd, the king, and the crystal shop. They developed a friendship, although the 15 minutes he spent with her each day felt like an eternity. After nearly a month at the oasis, the caravan leader summoned all travelers to discuss their journey. He stated that the war's arrival was uncertain, warning that battles could prolong for years due to the formidable forces on both sides. This conflict wasn't merely a good versus evil scenario. It was a struggle over power balance, which often results in protracted battles, as divine favor lies with both factions. As the boy contemplated returning to his previous life, he pondered his desire to be with Fatima. That afternoon, he recounted the meeting to her. Fatima reminded him that she declared love for him and enlightened him about the universal language that connects all souls. This realization made him feel intertwined with her essence. Listening to her voice, he found it more enchanting than nature's whispers. I have lingered at this oasis for an extended period, losing memories of my past, traditions, and expectations surrounding women in the desert, she said. Since childhood, I envisioned the desert offer me a remarkable gift. Now that gift has arrived in the form of you. He yearned to grasp her hand, but Fatima's hands were occupied with her duties. You shared your dreams about the ancient king and your treasure, she noted. You spoke of omens that guided you to me, instilling in me a fearlessness. I am a part of your dream, your personal legend, as you call it. This is why I urge you to pursue your goals, whether you need to wait until the war concludes or set forth immediately to chase after your aspirations. The dunes may shift with the wind, but the desert itself remains unchanged, much like our love. If I truly am a fragment of your vision, you will return to me one day, she expressed. As he departed that day, he reflected on the shepherds he knew, who struggled to persuade their wives of the necessity to travel to distant pastures. Love often demanded they stay with their beloved ones. He did not speak of this during their next encounter. Desert ticks are composed of elements that do not always return, she stated, acknowledging that we have come to accept this reality. They do not always come back. Instead, they become a part of the clouds, the creatures that conceal themselves in the ravines, and the water that emerges from the earth, merging into everything around them. They become the essence of the world. Some do return, bringing joy to other women, as they hold on to the hope that their loved ones may also one day come back. I used to observe those women with envy, drawn to their joy. Now, I too will be counted among them, a desert woman, and I take pride in that identity. I desire my husband to roam as freely as the wind that stirs the dunes, and if necessary, I will accept that he has become part of the clouds, the creatures, and the water of the desert. The boy set out to find the Englishman, eager to share his thoughts about Fatima. He was startled to discover the Englishman had constructed a furnace outside his tent, an unusual setup powered by firewood, with a clear flask warming atop it. As the Englishman gazed at the desert, he was preoccupied with his readings and musings. This is the initial step, he explained. I must extract the sulfur, and to do this efficiently, I need to banish my fear of failure. It was that fear that initially hindered me from undertaking the masterwork, something I could have begun a decade ago. Fortunately, in 20 years, this endeavor has continued to stoke the flames. The boy lingered until the desert was painted pink by the setting sun, feeling compelled to venture into the wilderness, seeking if its Simons might possess the answers to his inquiries. He wanted to hold on to the knowledge. As is often the case with insights, one must truly listen to the breeze and notice the stones underfoot. Here and there, he spotted Michelle and comprehended that the desert in ancient times had once been ocean. He sat on the rock, becoming entranced by the horizon, contemplating that love's cause differs from ownership and that he could distinguish between the two. Yet Fatima, a creature of the desert, embodied its essence. If anything could aid his understanding, it was the desert. While pondering in solitude, he perceived movement overhead. Glancing up, he observed two hawks soaring in the vast sky. He followed their graceful flight, which seemed devoid of order, yet to him, it held a certain logic that he couldn't fully decipher. He traced the patterns of the birds, attempting to extract meaning regarding love devoid of possession. A sense of drowsiness washed over him. Though he yearned to stay alert, sleep beckoned. He told himself, I am learning the world's language, and every aspect is increasingly clear to me, even the hawk's flight. At that moment, he felt thankful for love. When enveloped in love, clarity deepens. Abruptly, one hawk darted back, attacking the other, and in the midst of this dynamic, a fleeting image struck the boy, an army armed and charging toward the oasis. The vision vanished as swiftly as it appeared, leaving him shaken. He had heard tales of omens and had glimpsed a few himself, desires so fervent that they manifested across the barren sands. However, he definitely didn't wish for an army to seize the oasis. He longed to dismiss the vision and return to his contemplation. He attempted once more to focus on the dusty pink hues of the desert and its stones, yet something within him prevented that thought process. The omens the old king referenced lingered in his memory. He recalled the vision and sensed its forthcoming reality. Rising, he directed himself toward the palms again, embracing countless languages, yet recognizing this time that the oasis had turned perilous. The camel driver sat at the base of a palm, observing the sunset. He noticed movement emerging from beyond the dunes. An army was approaching. The boy declared, I had a vision. The desert fills men's hearts with visions, answered the camel driver. However, the boy recounted his observations of the hawks, expressing that he felt he had plunged into the essence of the world. The camel driver grasped the boy's sentiments and understood well what he meant. Anything found on this planet can unveil the chronicles of all existence. One might open a book at random or observe someone's hand or perhaps flip a card, taking note of the birds soaring above. In every object or event, an individual can uncover a link to their own moment's experience. The truth is, these items do not inherently disclose any truths. Rather, it is the observers who can connect with the essence of the universe through their surroundings. The desert was a realm where encounters were plentiful, defined by the ease with which individuals could tap into this universal spirit. These individuals, referred to as sages, evoked fear among women and the older members of the community. Moreover, the tribesmen were cautious in seeking their advice, recognizing that knowing one's fate could hinder their effectiveness in combat. They favored the thrill of battle, reveling in the uncertainty of outcomes. The future was perceived to be preordained by Allah and believed to be ultimately beneficial for humanity. Therefore, tribesmen concentrated solely on the present, brimming with unexpected events, which required vigilance regarding various dangers, including enemy weapons and the whereabouts of their steeds. The camel driver, not being a warrior, had frequently consulted with these sages. Some were astute in their insights, while others were mistaken. One day, he came across the most intimidating sage and inquired about the camel driver's interest in the divine will. The sage replied that it was so he could alter those occurrences he wished to avoid. However, the sage warned that such changes would alter the destined future. The driver responded, perhaps wishing to know what lay ahead to better equip himself for what was to come. If favorable events were in store, there would be delightful surprises, replied the sage. Conversely, foreknowledge of adverse happenings would lead to immense suffering even before they materialized. I seek knowledge of the future because I am a man, asserted the camel driver. The sages consistently organized their lives around future events. This particular sage specialized in divination, using twigs, interpreting their fall on that day. He did not proceed with practice. Instead, he wrapped the twigs in cloth and returned them to his bag. I earn my living predicting the future for others, he claimed. I recognize the symbols within the twigs and understand how to access the truths written in the cosmos. I can unveil the past and unveil what is already been overlooked and comprehend the proprietors present at this moment. When individuals seek my counsel, it's not that I possess the ability to foresee the future. Rather, I am speculating that the future is in God's hands, and it is He alone who discloses it under exceptional conditions. My projections about the future stem from the current omens. The key lies in the present. By focusing on the now, one can enhance and endorse it. If you embrace the current moment, what follows will also be improved. Disregard the future and engage each day in accordance with the teachings, assured that God cherishes his children. Every single day encompasses an eternity. The camel driver inquired about the conditions under which God would permit him to glimpse the future, stating that it would only be revealed when God, in his wisdom, chooses to do so. Such revelations are infrequent and primarily intended for an already written future that has the potential for change. God showed the boy a glimpse of the future because he wished for the boy to act as his messenger. Go speak to the tribal leaders, instructed the camel driver. Inform them of the approaching armies. The boy contemplated that those in the desert are adept at interpreting omens, and likely they were already aware and unconcerned. They believe that if they need to know something, Allah will ensure they are informed, as has occurred on numerous occasions. However, this time, the messenger is you. The boy thought of Fatima and resolved to visit the tribal chiefs. He approached the guard stationed at the entrance of the vast white tent located at the heart of the oasis. I wish to see the chieftains who have journeyed solely from the desert, he announced. Without a word, the guard entered the tent and remained absent for a while. Upon returning, he was accompanied by a young individual dressed in white and gold. The boy conveyed to the young man what he had witnessed. The man asked him to wait, then vanished back into the tent. Night fell, and a steady stream of merchants came and went from the tent, each taking their leave one by one. Gradually, the campfires were extinguished, leaving the oasis as silent as the surrounding desert. The lights within the grand tent shone throughout this time as the boy pondered over Fatima, still struggling to grasp the essence of their last conversation. After what felt like hours, the guard summoned him inside, and the boy was taken aback by what lay before him. He could never have envisioned that a tent of such magnificence would exist amid the desert. The ground was adorned with the most exquisite carpeting he had ever set foot on. At the top of the arrangement, Lamson and Ross's goal was illuminated by a candle. The tribal chieftains occupied the rear of the tent, positioned in a semicircle on luxurious silk cushions. Servants frequently entered and exited, carrying silver trays filled with spices and tea, while others ensured the hookah fires burned bright, filling the air with a sweet-smelling smoke. Among the 8 chieftains, the boy quickly identified the most significant figure in a red outfit adorned with white and gold, who sat at the semicircle's core. This was the same young boy he had conversed with earlier. "Who is the outsider that speaks of omens?" one chieftain inquired, directing his gaze at the boy. "It is I," the boy responded, recounting his observations. "The desert reveals the truth to a traveler when it recognizes that we have existed here for generations," remarked another chieftain. "Since my eyes are yet to adapt to the desert," the boy replied, "I can discern things that those more familiar may overlook, and I possess insight into the essence of the world." He contemplated the neutrality of the oasis, aware that no one would strike there. "I can only convey what I have witnessed," he continued. "If you choose not to believe me, there's no obligation for action." The man became captivated in an animated debate in a regional Arabic dialect the boy could not comprehend. But when he attempted to depart, the guards instructed him to remain, leading to his unease. The signs had warned him of impending trouble, and he regretted mentioning to the camel driver what he had encountered in the desert. Suddenly, the man at the center smiled subtly, which eased the boy's tension. He had been partaking in the discussion, yet had remained silent until now. Accustomed to the universal language, the boy sensed a wave of tranquility enveloping him. His instinct suggested he had channeled the exchange, and silence fell as chieftains turned their attention to the old man. The old man directed his gaze back to the boy, his demeanor now frigid and aloof. 2 millennia passed. In a remote land, a man who believed in dreams found himself imprisoned and sold into slavery, began the elder. He continued in a dialect the boy familiarized himself with. "Our merchants purchased this man and transported him to Egypt. We all understand that he who trusts in dreams also comprehends their interpretation." He further elaborated on how when the pharaoh was troubled by dreams of gaunt cows and healthy ones, this individual saved Egypt from starvation. "His name was Joseph, and he was an outsider in a foreign land, much like you," he stated, his eyes still unwelcoming. Always respect the customs that preserved Egypt from hunger during ancient times, transforming its people into the most affluent. These customs instruct individuals on traversing the desert and guide the matrimonial choices of their descendants. It holds that an oasis serves as neutral ground since both factions possess access to oases, making each susceptible. No one interrupted the elder as he continued speaking. Yet the customs also assert that we must heed the desert's messages. All our knowledge has been imparted by the desert. The elder gestured, prompting everyone to rise, signaling the conclusion of the gathering. The hookahs were snuffed out, and the guards positioned themselves attentively. The young boy prepared to exit, but the elder addressed him once more. Tomorrow, we will disregard the pact prohibiting the carrying of weapons all day, keeping vigilant for our adversaries. As dusk falls, the Senate will surrender their weapons to me. For every 10 fallen foes, you shall earn a piece of gold. Equipment cannot be brandished unless battle is also engaged, as arms are fickle like the desert. If not wielded today, they may fail to function in the future. Should even one remain untouched, it could be turned against you tomorrow. Upon leaving the tent, the oasis glowed solely under the full moon. 20 minutes from his tent, he began to head in that direction, alarmed by the events unfolding. He had connected with the world's essence, and the cost may well be his life. The thought that he had been making perilous decisions since the day he sold the sheep to chase his personal legend was daunting. To die tomorrow, he contemplated, was no different than any other day. Life presented itself for living or bidding farewell to this realm. Everything hinged on a single word. As he walked through the stillness, he bore no regrets. If he were to perish tomorrow, it would be because fate intended no alteration to the future. At the very least, he would depart after traversing the strait, experiencing the hardships of labor, the solitude of the desert, and the gaze of Fatima. Since leaving home long ago, he had lived each day fully, and if he were to die tomorrow, he would have seen more than most shepherds, and for that, he felt a sense of pride. The unusual horseman suddenly broke the peace with a thunderous noise, sending him crashing to the ground, caught in a gust like none he had ever encountered. The surroundings twisted with such ferocity that it obscured the moon, and before him loomed a colossal white horse, rearing with a terrifying cry. As the blinding dust settled, he found himself in a surreal situation. The boy quaked at the sight of the figure riding the creature before him, a horseman entirely clad in black, with a falcon resting on his left shoulder. He wore a turban, and his face was almost entirely shrouded in a black veil, leaving only his eyes visible. He seemed like a messenger from the desert, yet his presence radiated a far greater authority than that of a mere errand runner. The peculiar horseman unsheathed a massive, curving sword from a scabbard fixed to his side, which shimmered under the moonlight. "Understand the meaning behind the hawk's flight," he proclaimed, his voice echoing across the expanse that encompassed 50,000 palm trees. "It is I who dare to interpret it," the boy asserted, recalling Santiago, the hero on his white steed, trampling the infidels beneath. This moment felt strangely similar, albeit with the roles now reversed. "It is I who dare to interpret it," he reiterated, bowing his head in acceptance of the impending strike from the sword. "Many lives shall be spared, as I have pierced through to the soul of the world." Rather than descend, the sword was lowered gently, its tip brushing against the boy's forehead, drawing a solitary droplet of blood. Both the horseman and the boy stood rigid, immobilized in that moment. The thought of fleeing never crossed the boy's mind. Instead, an unusual joy surged through him. He was on the verge of sacrificing himself for his personal legend and for Fatima, knowing the omens had proved true. Here he stood, confronting his adversary, yet death held no fear for him. The soul of the world awaited him, and soon his opponent would also join that essence. The stranger maintained his grip on the sword as he urged the boy to interpret the bird's flight. "I listened solely to what the birds wished to convey. They want to preserve the oasis. Tomorrow, all of you will perish, for there are more men at the oasis than you know." The sword lingered in its position, and the boy contemplated that to alter fate was a divine prerogative. The same hand that created the armies also fashioned the hawks. "Allah taught me the language of the birds, Everything is inscribed by the same source, the boy recollected, referring to the camel driver's eerie foretelling. The stranger withdrew the sword from the boy's forehead, and relief washed over him, though he remained cautious. Exercise care with your predictions, the stranger warned. When something is ordained, it cannot be altered. All I perceived was an army, the boy replied. I didn't foresee the battle's outcome. The stranger appeared content with this response. And what brings you to this foreign land? I am in pursuit of my personal legend, not something you would grasp. The stranger placed the sword into a sheath as the boy loosened his stance. I needed to evaluate your bravery, the stranger remarked. Courage is a key attribute essential for deciphering the world's language, yet astonished the boy, as the stranger spoke of concepts that few were aware of. You must persevere even after reaching this point, he urged. You should have affection for the desert, yet never place complete trust in it, for the desert challenges at every turn and can eliminate those who become sidetracked. What he stated reminded the boy of a thought. If warriors arrive and your head remains on your shoulders by sunset, come and locate me. The stranger instructed. The same hand that had wielded the sword now gripped the whip. The horse reared once more, stirring up a cloud of dust. Where do you reside? The boy asked as the horseman departed, and the whip-bearing hand gestured southward. The boy encountered the alchemist the next morning, with 2,000 armed individuals dispersed among the palm trees that all fight you. Before the Senate reached its elevation, 500 tribesmen emerged on the horizon, mounted troops approaching the oasis from the north. It seemed to be a tranquil mission, yet they were all armed, concealed in their robes. Upon arriving at the white tent at the heart of all fight you, they drew their scimitars and rifles, launching the attack that overwhelmed the oasis inhabitants. Within half an hour, nearly all the attackers were slain, except for one. The children, sheltered behind a grove of palm trees, paid little heed to the events, while the women remained in their tents, praying for their husband's safety, remaining oblivious to the battle. Had it not been for the bodies strewn on the ground, it would have seemed like an ordinary day in the oasis. The only tribesman spared was a battalion's commander. That afternoon, he was brought before the tribal leaders, who inquired why he had breached tradition. The commander explained that they had been famished and parched, weary from many days of conflict, and sought to seize the oasis to recharge for the war. The tribal chieftain expressed sympathy for the tribesmen, but insisted that the tradition was sacred. He condemned the commander to an ignoble death, rather than face execution by a more pleasurable means. He was hung from a tree, his body left distorted under the desert sun. The boy was then called forth to receive 50 gold pieces, recounting the tale of Joseph. The boy was asked to become the advisor of the oasis. As the sun dipped below the horizon and the first stars emerged, the boy began to make his way toward the cell. Eventually, a lone occupant among a group of travelers informed the boy that this location was known for being populated by genies. The boy chose to sit and wait, not unlike a high alchemist riding in the carry, as he looked over his shoulder. "I'm here," the boy announced. "You shouldn't be here. Is it your personal legend that has led you here?" The alchemist queried, noting that crossing the desert was deemed impossible. "I have come here," the boy replied. The alchemist dismounted his horse and gestured for the boy to enter the tent, signaling that it was a test common in many oases. Inside, a variety of alchemical tools and a few scattered books accompanied a small cooking stove and carpets adorned with enigmatic patterns. "Sit down. We will have something to drink and eat," the alchemist said. The boy suspected these were the same hawks he had seen the previous day, but chose to remain silent. The alchemist, like the flames of the stove, radiated warmth as a delightful aroma filled the air, more captivating than any central focus. "Why did you wish to see me?" the boy inquired. "Due to the omens," the alchemist replied. "The wind informed me of your arrival and that you would be in need of assistance." The boy recalled the mention of another traveler, the Englishman who was searching for him, though he had other priorities first. "He's on the right path. He's begun to grasp the essence of the desert," the alchemist elaborated. "What about me?" the boy asked. "When someone genuinely yearns for something, all the universe conspires to aid that person in realizing their dream," echoed the alchemist, reminiscent of the words from the old king. The boy realized another individual was present to support him on his personal journey. "So, you're going to teach me?" he asked. "You already possess all necessary knowledge. My role is to guide you toward your treasure." "I do know about the tribal word," the boy responded. "I understand the happenings in the desert. I've discovered my treasure already. I possess a camel, my earnings from the crystal shop, and 50 gold pieces. In my country, I would indeed be wealthy, but none of that comes from the pyramids," the alchemist noted. "I also have Fatima. She is a treasure exceeding all others, and she wasn't at the pyramids." They ate in silence as the alchemist uncorked a bottle and poured a crimson liquid into the boy's cup. It was the most exquisite wine he had ever tasted. "Why is it forbidden here?" the boy asked. "It's not what enters a man's mouth that is evil," the alchemist replied, "but rather what emerges from it." The alchemist's demeanor was somewhat intimidating, yet as the boys savored the wine, tension eased. After finishing their meal, they settled outside the tent beneath the brilliant moonlight that it caused the stars to lose their brightness. "Savor your drink and enjoy yourself," the alchemist remarked, noticing the boys' increased joy. "Rest well tonight, as if you are a warrior gearing up for battle. Keep in mind that your treasure lies wherever your heart is. You must seek out the treasure, so that all you've learned will be meaningful tomorrow." Selling camels and riding horses, traders are tireless, covering thousands of pages without showing signs of fatigue until they suddenly collapse and die. Horses, on the other hand, wear out gradually, allowing you to gauge how much they can handle before they near their end. That evening, the boy showed up at the alchemist's tent with a horse. The alchemist was prepared. He mounted his own steed, placing the falcon on his left shoulder. He instructed the boy, "Lead me to where life exists in the desert. Only those who recognize such signs are capable." The quest for treasure prompted a journey across the sandy terrain illuminated by the moon. Uncertain of discovering life within the desert's expanse, I hesitated regarding my knowledge of this desolate land. The alchemist, wary of the man accompanying them, pressed on as they approached a rugged area under the vigilant hawks above, though silence enveloped them now. "I understand how to uncover life in this desert," the boy claimed confidently. "I sense existence here, yet I am unsure where to seek it." "Life draws life," the alchemist replied, leading to the boy's realization. He relaxed the horse's reins and surged ahead over the rocky ground, the alchemist trailing behind for nearly half an hour until the palms of the oasis faded from view amid the vast expanse of the desert. Suddenly, for reasons unknown, the boy's words began to dwindle. "There's existence here," he professed to the alchemist. "I may not speak the desert's tongue, but my horse comprehends the essence of life." They dismounted, and the alchemist remained silent as they cautiously scanned the area among the stones. Without warning, the alchemist halted abruptly, having spotted a hole at the ground surface. He thrust one arm deep into the opening, struggling against whatever lurked within. The boy could see only the strain in the alchemist's eyes as he wrestled with the unseen. Then, with a swift movement, the alchemist withdrew his arm and sprang to his feet, gripping a snake by its tail. The boy also took a step back from the alchemist as the snake writhed violently, its hissing sound breaking the desert's tranquility. It was a cobra, lethal to any who underestimated its venom. "Be cautious of its bite," the boy cautioned. However, the alchemist, having already plunged his hand into the hole, likely had been bitten, yet his demeanor remained composed. The alchemist, claimed to be 200 years old by the Englishman, surely possessed knowledge of the desert snakes. The boy observed as his mentor brandished a scimitar, tracing a circle in the sand before placing the snake inside. Almost instantly, the serpent calmed. "Do not fear," the alchemist reassured him. "It won't cross the circle. You've discovered life in the desert. This is the omen I sought." The significance of this moment was immense, particularly since the pyramids loom amidst the desert expanse. The boy ached to avoid talking about the pyramids. His heart felt heavy and sorrowful since the prior evening. The pursuit of treasure required him to leave Fatima behind. "I will lead you through the desert," the alchemist declared. "Will I reach the oasis?" the boy asked. "I discovered Fatima once." Concerned that she is more valuable than gold, Fatima, a woman of the desert, Understand that men must journey away before they can come back. She believes that you already possess your treasure. What if you chose to remain? Here's what will unfold. You will become the counselor of the oasis, possessing ample gold to purchase a mission and many camels. You would marry Fatima and experience happiness for a year, gradually learning to appreciate the desert, familiarizing yourself with each one of the 50,000 homes, witnessing their growth in the ever-changing world. Your understanding will deepen because the desert serves as the ultimate teacher. At some point in your second year, thoughts of the treasure will resurface, and the omens will begin to call out to you insistently, though you may attempt to overlook them. You will apply your wisdom for the betterment of the oasis and its people, earning the gratitude of the tribal chieftains, while your camels bring you wealth and influence. By the third year, the omens will persistently hint at your treasure and personal legend. You will stroll around the oasis nightly, and Fatima will feel discontent, sensing that she has interrupted your quest. Yet, your love for her will blossom, and she will reciprocate. You will recall that she never urged you to stay, as a woman of the desert understands that she must wait for her man. You will not blame her, but at times you may wander through the desert, pondering if you could have trusted your love for Fatima more. Your fear of not returning will overshadow your time at the oasis. Eventually, the omens will declare that your treasure is eternally buried. Then, in your fourth year, the omens will cease to guide you as you stop heeding their calls. The tribal chieftains will notice, and you will lose your role as counselor. However, by that time, you will be a prosperous merchant with a multitude of camels and a wealth of goods, spending the remainder of your days regretting that you didn't chase your personal legend, realizing it is now too late. It is essential to understand that true love does not hinder a man from pursuing his personal legend. If he forsakes that quest, it is not genuine love. True love speaks the language of the world. The crystal merchant recalls his long-held desire to visit Mecca, as the Englishman seeks the alchemist. He thinks of the woman who believed in him within the desert, gazing across the sands that led him to the one he cherished. He mounts his horse, and this time it is the boy who will follow the alchemist. Back at the oasis, the wind carried the sounds of surroundings, and the boy attempted to mimic Factum's voice. However, that evening, as he observed the cobra inside the circle, a peculiar horseman, adorned with a falcon on his shoulder, spoke of love, treasure, the women of the desert, and his own personal journey. "I'm coming with you," the boy proclaimed, immediately experiencing a sense of tranquility within. "We'll leave tomorrow at dawn with the alchemist," was the only reply. The boy endured a restless night, and 2 hours before the sun rose, he stirred from his sleep, sought out a friend who was resting in his tent, and requested directions to Fatima's home. He made his way to her tent, offering his companion enough gold to purchase a modest gift before asking him to enter Fatima's sleeping quarters, rouse her, and relay that he awaited her outside. The young man dutifully complied, receiving sufficient gold to acquire another sheet. "Leave us be," the boy instructed his young friend, who promptly returned to sleep, satisfied with his newfound wealth to buy himself a sheet. Fatima emerged from her tent to greet the boy among the palms, fully aware that stepping outside was against tradition, yet it no longer held significance for him. "I am departing," he declared, "but I want you to know I will return. I love you." Fatima cut him off, asserting that love requires no explanation, and with that, the boy continued, "I had a dream where I met the King of Crystal at a table. After war was declared among the tribes, I sought out the alchemist. My love for you stems from the universe's support in guiding me to you." They embraced, marking the first time either had felt the other's touch. "I will be back," said the boy, reflecting that he used to gaze at the desert with desire. He recalled how his father would depart on Wednesdays, but always returned to his mother, ensuring he would come back, too, entrusted with nothing else. He left her near the palms, saying, "I will return just as your father returned to your mother." As he departed, he noticed tears in Fatima's eyes. "It's just a moment in the desert," she said, turning her gaze away. "But above all, I am a woman." Fatima retreated into her tent, and when dawn broke, she would resume her daily responsibilities that she had performed for years. However, everything was different now. The boy was gone from the oasis, which would never again carry the same significance as it had the day before. It would no longer feel like a refuge filled with 50,000 palm trees. Trees and 300 wells marked the place where the pilgrims arrived after their lengthy journeys. From that point onward, the oasis would become a desolate spot for her. It was a desert that would hold significance. Each day, she would gaze out at it, attempting to discern which star the boat was trailing in its quest for a stretcher. She would send kisses carried by the wind, wishing it would caress the boy's face and convey to him that she was alive and waiting. A woman, embodying courage, sought a stretcher. Henceforth, the desert symbolized only one thing for her: the hope of his return. Do not dwell on what you have left behind. The alchemist advised the boy as they arranged a ride across the desert. Everything is inscribed in the soul of the world, and it will remain there eternally. He imparted wisdom regarding the nature of returning as well as departing. The boy indicated that he had readjusted to the desert's silence. If what one discovers is composed of pure essence, it will never decay, and one can always revisit. If it is merely a fleeting spark, akin to a star's explosion, then nothing will await upon your return. The demand translated the principles of alchemy, but the boy understood he was alluding to factum. It was challenging to avoid pondering what had been left behind. The alchemist's presence amidst the desert's nonstop sameness propelled him into visions. The boy could still envision the palm trees, the wells, and the face of his beloved woman, witnessing the Englishman engaged in his experiments and the camel driver, a teacher without intent. Perhaps the alchemist had never experienced love. The boy walked along the alchemist's path, with a falcon perched on his shoulder, acknowledging the desert's language. Whenever they paused in pursuit of game on their first day back, the swift wind stirred, and by the second day, 2 birds signaled their night's repose through hidden fires. The desert nights were increasingly cold and dark, with echoes of the past surrounding them. They spent a week discussing only the precautions necessary to avoid skirmishes during their travels. The war raged on. Now and then, the air carried a sweet, sickening scent of blood. Conflict had unfolded close by. The wind reminded the boy of the language of the Romans, always prepared to reveal what his eyes had missed. On the 7th day, the alchemist chose to establish camp earlier than usual. The falcon soared a hunt while the alchemist extended his water container towards the boy. "You are nearing the finish of your journey," the alchemist remarked. "I commend you for pursuing your personal legend, yet you shared nothing along the way." "Way," said the boy. "I thought you were going to share some of your knowledge with me." "Some time back, I traveled to the desert with a man who studied alchemy, but I never absorbed anything from them." "There's only one method to learn," the alchemist replied, "and that is through action. Everything essential you need has come from your experiences. You must discover just one more thing." The boy was eager to find out what that was, but the alchemist was gazing at the horizon, searching for the falcon. "Why are you referred to as the alchemist?" the boy asked. "Because that's who I am," came the answer. When others attempted to transform base metals into gold and failed, it was because they sought only the gold itself. They were chasing after the treasures of their personal legends while avoiding the true adventure of living those legends. "What is it that I still need to understand?" questioned the boy. Yet the alchemist remained focused on the horizon until the falcon returned. They prepared a meal and dug a hole so that the fire would not be visible. "It's simply because I am an alchemist," he explained as he cooked. "I inherited my knowledge from my grandfather, who learned from his father, and so on, tracing back to the creation of the world. In those days, masterworks could be documented straightforwardly. However, men started to dismiss simplicity, turning towards convoluted interpretations and philosophical inquiries. They also began to believe they had a better understanding than others." The alchemist stated, "The emerald tablet remains relevant today." "What does the emerald tablet convey?" the boy inquired. The alchemist began sketching, completing his drawing in under 5 minutes. As he drew, the boy contemplated the old king in the plaza, recalling how long ago those events appeared to have transpired. This is what the emerald tablet says. The alchemist indicated upon completion. The boy attempted to decipher the contents, but was slightly disappointed, saying, "It's a code." "No," the alchemist rebutted. It's akin to the flight of those two hawks. It transcends mere reason. The Emerald Tablet serves as a direct link to the soul of the world. Wise individuals realize that this physical realm is merely a reflection and imitation of paradise. The existence of this world affirms that a perfect world exists. God created this world so that through its tangible elements, humanity could grasp his spiritual teachings and the principles of his wisdom. That's what I mean by action. Should I interpret the Emerald Tablet? The boy asked. Perhaps if you were in a laboratory of alchemy, this marks an opportune moment to grasp the true essence of the Emerald Tablet. However, you find yourself in the desert, so immersing yourself in this environment will provide deeper insight into the world. In fact, anything present on Earth holds significance even if you don't fully comprehend the desert itself. A mere grain of sand can reveal the wonders of creation. How do you immerse yourself in the desert? Tune into your heart, as it possesses all knowledge originating from the soul of the world, destined to return there one day. As they continued their journey in silence for 2 days, the alchemist grew increasingly wary, nearing the region where fierce battles unfolded. During this time, the boy attempted to listen to his heart, which proved challenging. In earlier times, his heart was always eager to share stories, but recently that wasn't the case. There were moments when it conveyed tales of sorrow and, at times, overflowed with emotion upon witnessing the desert sunrise, prompting the boy to conceal his tears. Its pace varied significantly. It spoke quickly of treasure, yet slowed down when he gazed at the endless desert horizon. Despite this, his heart and the alchemist fell into a quietude. Why must we heed our hearts? The boy questioned as they set up camp that evening. Because wherever your heart resides is where your treasure lies. The boy replied, My heart feels restless. It swings between extremes, growing emotional and fixating on a woman from the desert, demanding my attention and disrupting my sleep. That's excellent. Your heart is vibrant. Continue to pay attention to its messages. Over the next 3 days, the two adventurers encountered several armed tribesmen and noticed others in the distance. The boy's heart began to voice its fears, recounting tales absorbed from the soul of the world, stories of men who sought treasure yet failed. Occasionally, the boy grappled with the notion that he might not discover this treasure and could perish in the desert. Other times, his heart reassured him of its contentment from finding love and wealth. My heart feels like a traitor, the boy shared with the alchemist. It keeps pulling me back, urging me not to continue. That makes sense, the alchemist replied. It naturally fears that in your pursuit of dreams, you may lose everything you cherish. Keep listening and observing your heart, because you may never find again what it has to reveal, even if you try to ignore its messages. Always be present within, echoing your thoughts on life and the universe. You suggest I should heed this inner voice, even when its betrayal feels like an unforeseen blow. If you truly know your heart, it cannot mislead you, as you are familiar with its dreams and desires and will understand how to navigate your feelings. There is no escaping your heart, so it's wise to listen to its wisdom. Doing so will eliminate the dread of unexpected strikes. As the boy traversed the desert, he continued to attune himself to his heart, gradually understanding its nuances and accepting it as it was. He shed his fears and dismissed the urge to return to the oasis because one afternoon, his heart revealed that this was unfolding. Despite its occasional complaints, it explained that this is typical of human hearts. People often hesitate to chase their most significant dreams out of a sense of unworthiness or the belief that these aspirations are unattainable. Our hearts tremble at the thought of losing loved ones forever or realizing potential for missed opportunities, or treasures buried in the sands of time. These experiences evoke profound suffering. My heart fears that suffering is inevitable, the boy confided to the alchemist one evening as they gazed at the starless sky. Tell your heart that the fear of suffering is far more daunting than the suffering itself, and remind it that no heart has ever truly suffered in pursuit of its dreams. In fact, every moment spent searching is a moment spent encountering the divine in eternity. The boy conveyed this to his heart, affirming that his quest for treasure has illuminated his days, making each hour integral to the dream he seeks. In the process of genuinely seeking his treasure, He discovered wonders along the journey that he would have missed had he not dared to pursue what seemed unattainable for a shepherd. Thus, his heart found peace for an entire afternoon. That night, he fell into a deep sleep, and upon waking, his heart began to share insights drawn from the soul of the world, revealing that all beings possess the essence of God within them, and that happiness could be found even in a single grain of sand from the desert. This grain represents a moment of creation that took eons to form, signifying that every individual on earth is a treasure waiting to be uncovered, even though people's hearts typically say little about these truths. Treasures have become less sought after because people have lost a desire to pursue them. We only discuss them with children in later years. We allow life to unfold according to its own course, following its unique fate. But sadly, very few individuals embark on the journey meant for them, the journey to their personal legends and to true happiness. Most perceive the world as a menacing place, and as a result, it manifests as such. Their hearts whisper increasingly quietly. Even though we persist in voicing our thoughts, we start to wish for our words to go unnoticed, not wanting others to endure anguish for not heeding their hearts. Yet, wine labels still encourage them to chase their aspirations. When the boy questioned the alchemist about why this is, he learned that it is the pursuit of dreams that causes the most heartache. The boy came to grasp the language of his heart and requested that it never cease communicating with him, for it urged him not to stray from his dreams. His heart would sound the alarm, and the boy pledged to respond every time he heard it. That evening, he shared all this with the alchemist, who realized the boy's heart had reconnected with the soul of the world. "What should I do next?" asked the boy. "Continue towards the pyramids," the alchemist advised, "and remain attentive to the elements. Your heart can still guide you to where your treasure lies." Was that the only thing he needed to know? No, replied the alchemist. What you truly need to understand is that before a dream is fulfilled, the soul of the world tests everything learned throughout the journey, not out of malice, but to ensure we can not only achieve our dreams, but also master the lessons gleaned along the way. Most individuals give up at this crucial juncture, a moment we can describe in the desert's language as dying of thirst just when the palm trees appear on the horizon. Every pursuit begins with beginner's luck, and triumphs demand rigorous testing. The boy recalled an old saying from his land: "The darkest hour at night arrives just before dawn." The next day, the first visible threat emerged. 3 armed tribesmen approached and inquired what the boy and the alchemist were engaged in. "I'm hunting with my falcon," the alchemist responded. "We'll need to search you to confirm you aren't armed," the tribesman stated. The alchemist complied slowly, and the boy mirrored his actions. "Why do you have money?" asked the tribesman as they examined the boy's pack. "I needed to reach the pyramids," he explained. The tribesmen turned their attention to searching the alchemist. The alchemist produced a small crystal flask containing a liquid and a yellow glass egg, somewhat larger than a chicken's egg. With these items, he claimed they represented the philosopher's stone and the elixir of life, the pinnacle of alchemical achievement. Anyone who consumes this elixir will never experience illness again, and a fragment of the stone can transform any metal into gold. The Arabs found his assertions amusing, and after the alchemist departed, they laughed, allowing the boy to continue alongside him with all of their possessions. "Are you insane?" the boy asked the alchemist once they had moved a distance away. "Why did you do that?" The alchemist replied, "To teach you one of life's simple lessons. When you hold immense treasures within, sharing them with others rarely yields belief." As they journeyed through the desert, the boy's heart grew increasingly quiet, losing interest in the past or the future. It found peace simply in contemplating the vastness of the desert and drawing sustenance from the world's essence. The boy's heart formed a bond, now incapable of betrayal. When it communicated with him, it invigorated the boy and offered him strength, for the long days of silence in the desert were exhausting. His heart illuminated his most admirable traits: his courage in relinquishing his sheep and striving to realize his personal legend, as well as his passion during his time at the crystal shop. Yet, his heart also revealed threats that the boy had overlooked. It recounted a time when he had been uprooted from his father, alluding to the risk inherent in the boy's independence. It reminded him of an episode when he had fallen ill and lay in the fields, succumbing to deep slumber while his father had strategized to steal the boy's sheep and killing But when the boy passed them, they opted to proceed, believing he had altered his course. A man's heart will always assist those in pursuit of their personal legends. The boy queried the alchemist, who noted that it primarily aids children, alcoholics, and the elderly. Does that imply I'll never face peril? It suggests merely that the heart does what it is able to. One afternoon, as they walked, they came upon a tribe's encampment. At each corner stood imposing figures draped in elegant white garments, armed and ready. The men indulged in their vices, sharing tales from combat. The two travelers garnered no attention. "There's no risk," the boy remarked as they continued onward. The alchemist, seemingly irked, retorted, "Trust your heart, but always remember you are in the desert. During times of war, the soul of the world hears the cries of conflict. The repercussions of everything under the sun are universally felt." The boy contemplated the notion that everything is interconnected, and just then, as if the desert wished to affirm the alchemist's words, warriors emerged to block their path. "You cannot proceed," one announced. "This is a war zone." "I'm not venturing far," the alchemist replied, locking eyes with the rider. After a brief pause, they conceded, allowing the boy and the alchemist to continue. The boy observed the interaction with great interest. "You intimidated those horsemen merely with your gaze," he remarked. "Your eyes reveal the strength within your soul," the alchemist replied. The boy realized that amidst the throng of armed men at the encampment, one figure had been staring at them from a distance, his face obscured, yet the boy felt certain he had been watched. Eventually, as they traversed a mountain range stretching across the horizon, the alchemist noted they were merely 2 days from the pyramids. "Our paths are about to diverge," the boy said. "Then enlighten me about alchemy. You already possess knowledge about alchemy. It involves delving into the soul of the world and uncovering the treasure that awaits you," the alchemist explained. "That's not what I mean. I'm referring to the conversion of lead into gold." The alchemist descended into silence, as still as the desert, and the boy, after a moment's pause, said, "In the grand scheme of the universe, everything possesses value. For wise men, gold stands as the evolved metal for this purpose. Don't question me as to why. I have no answer. I only know that tradition is infallible. Mankind has yet to grasp the wisdom of the sages. Hence gold. The perception of being a symbol of growth became the root of strife, as numerous languages are spoken. The boy mentioned that there was a moment when the camel's whinnying held no significance for him. Then it transformed into a warning of danger, only to revert to mere whinnying once more. However, the alchemist had probably already comprehended all of that. I have recognized true alchemists. They continue to seclude themselves in their labs, aspiring to evolve like gold and ultimately discover the philosopher's stone, because they realize that when something is intertwined with its surroundings, it also undergoes change. Some individuals stumbled upon the stone by chance, as they already possessed the innate quality, and their souls were more prepared for such revelations than the souls of others. Nonetheless, they are rather uncommon. There were also others solely fixated on gold, who never uncovered the secret. They forgot that copper and iron have their own unique legends to fulfill, and anyone who disrupts another's personal legend will never uncover their own. The words of the alchemist resonated ominously. He reached down to lift Michelle from the ground, stating that this desert was once a sea. The boy acknowledged this. The alchemist instructed the boy to place the shell to his ear, something he had done countless times in his childhood, hearing the ocean's melody. The ocean has persisted within the shell, because that's its personal legend, and it will continue to do so until the desert is once more submerged in water. They mounted their horses and rode toward the Egyptian pyramids. As the sun set, the boy's heart began to sense a danger signal, surrounded by towering dunes. He glanced at the alchemist to gauge if he perceived any threat, but he seemed oblivious to any peril. Moments later, the boy spotted 2 horsemen ahead, and before he could inform the alchemist, the 2 horsemen multiplied to 10, then to 100, until they were everywhere among the dunes. They were tribesmen clad in blue with black bands encircling their turbans, their faces obscured by blue veils, revealing only their eyes. Even from afar, the strength of their spirits was evident, and their eyes conveyed tales of death. The two were taken to a nearby military encampment where the boy and the alchemist were brought before the chief, who was in a meeting with his officers. "These are the spies," said one of the men. "We are merely travelers," replied the alchemist. "You were seen at the enemy camp 3 days ago, speaking with soldiers there." "I am just a wanderer in the desert who knows the stars," asserted the alchemist. "I possess no intelligence regarding troops or tribal movements. Absently serving as a guide for my friend, who is a chief and an alchemist, the alchemist comprehends natural forces and wishes to display his remarkable abilities." The boy listened intently, yet apprehensively. "What is a foreigner doing here?" one of the men inquired. "He has brought funds to present to your chief," replied the alchemist, interrupting the boy before he could utter anything. At that moment, from the boy's bag, the alchemist presented gold coins to the chief, who accepted them silently. This amount was substantial enough to acquire numerous weapons. "What is an alchemist?" someone asked. At last, an individual who grasps nature and the world. He could, if he chose, obliterate this encampment using nothing but the wind," replied another. The men chuckled, seasoned by the harsh realities of conflict, understanding that the wind poses no real threat to them. The boy felt a slight acceleration in his heartbeat. They were desert dwellers, wary of sorcery. "I want to witness this," declared the chief. "He needs 3 days," the alchemist responded, stating he would transform himself into the wind just for this demonstration of his capabilities. "If I cannot, we willingly offer you our lives for the honor of your chief." "You cannot offer me something that I already possess," the chief retorted with arrogance, yet he bestowed 3 days upon the travelers. The boy trembled with trepidation, but the alchemist guided him out of the tent. "Do not reveal your fear," the alchemist advised, "for they are valiant men and look down upon cowards." The boy found his voice only once they reached the center of the camp, realizing there was no need to confine them. Absently, their horses were taken, revealing once again the world's multitude of expressions. Moments ago, the desert felt boundless and liberating, but now it loomed like an insurmountable barrier. "You've given them everything I possessed," the boy lamented, "everything I saved throughout my life." "What good would that be if you were destined to die?" the alchemist countered. "Your money has secured our survival for 3 days. It's a rare occurrence for currency to preserve a life." Yet, the boy was too paralyzed by fear to absorb these profound insights, having no idea how he would transform into the wind. He was not an alchemist. Requesting supplies from one of the soldiers, the alchemist took some teas to relieve the boy's anxiety. A wave of calm washed over him as the alchemist uttered some phrases the boy could not comprehend. "Do not succumb to your fears," the alchemist stated in an unusual digital tone. "If you do, you will struggle to communicate with your heart. I have no clue how to transform myself into the wind if a person is living out his personal legend. He possesses all the knowledge necessary. Yet there exists a singular barrier to achieving a dream, the fear of failure. I don't fear failing. I just don't know how to transform myself into the wind. You must learn. Your life depends on it. But what if I can't? Then you will perish while striving to fulfill your personal legend, which is far more honorable than the fate of countless others who never even discovered their personal legends. Don't fret about the outcomes. Often, the looming specter of death heightens awareness of life. When the first day ended, a significant battle took place nearby, resulting in many wounded being brought back, while deceased soldiers were replaced and life continued. Death alters nothing. You could have faced death later, as one of your companions did. You might have died after a peace agreement was reached. Regardless, death awaited all. By day's end, the boy sought the alchemist, leading his falcon into the desert. "I still have no clue how to become the wind. Recall what I expressed. The world represents only one aspect of God, and alchemy connects spiritual perfection with the material realm. Why are you feeding my falcon? For the means to turn myself into the wind. We are destined to die," the boy declared. "Why worry? You are the one who might perish," the alchemist replied. "I am already aware of how to transform into the wind." On the second day, the boy ascended the cliff at the camp. The sentinels permitted their passage. They had already heard tales of a sorcerer who could become the wind and wished to avoid him. Nonetheless, the desert was unapproachable. The boy spent the entire afternoon of that second day gazing over the desert and attuning himself to his heart. He was well acquainted with the desert and his fear. Both spoke a mutual language. On the third day, the chief convened with his officers and called for the alchemist to join the meeting, stating, "Let's visit the boy who can turn himself into the wind." The alchemist agreed, and the boy guided them to the cliff. On the previous day, he instructed them all to be seated, indicating it would take time. The boy remarked, "We are not rushing. We are men of the desert," the chief replied. Beyond the horizon, mountains loomed in the distance, accompanied by dunes, rocks, and plants that thrived in seemingly inhospitable conditions. This was the desert he had longed for over many months, though he was still familiar only with a small segment of it. Within that small area, he encountered an Englishman, caravans, tribal conflicts, and a lush oasis boasting 50,000 palm trees and 300 wells. "What brings you here today?" The desert inquired. "Did you take enough time to appreciate my presence yesterday?" "Somewhere among you lies the one I cherish," the boy replied. "When I gaze upon your sands, I am reminded of her. I wish to return to her side, and I need your assistance to transform into the wind through his love." The desert responded, "Love resembles the falcon's ascent over your dunes. For him, you are the verdant fields to which he constantly returns. He is familiar with your stones, your dunes, and your mountains, and you are kind to him." The desert continued, "The falcon embodies fragments of my essence. For years, I have tended to its hunt, supplying it with what little water I possess, guiding it to where the prey lurks. Yet one day, as I take pleasure in the flourishing of its hunt, the falcon swoops down from the heavens and claims what I nurture." But that was the intent behind creating the hunt in the first place. The boy countered, "To sustain the falcon, and then the falcon sustains a man, and eventually a man will nurture your sand so that the hunt may thrive again." Such is the cycle of life. "Is this what love truly entails?" he asked. "Indeed, that is the essence of love. It propels the hunt to transform into the falcon to grow into a man, and in turn, the desert is what transmutes lead into gold and brings gold back to you." "I do not grasp your words," the desert replied, "but surely you recognize that somewhere within your sands there is a woman awaiting my return. That is why I must become the wind." The desert fell silent for a few moments before it said, "I shall lend you my sands to aid in the wind's journey, but alone I am powerless. You must seek assistance from the wind." A gentle breeze began to stir, causing the tribesmen to observe the boy from afar, murmuring among themselves in a tongue unfamiliar to him. The alchemist smiled. The wind approached the boy, caressing his face, and allowed the boy to commune with the desert, as the winds possess knowledge of all things. They traversed the globe aimlessly, without a home or a resting place. "Help me," the boy implored, "for you have borne the voice of my beloved to me, who taught you the language of the desert and the wind." "My heart," the boy responded. "The wind is known by many names, and in that region it is referred to as a sirocco, for it carries moisture from the oceans to the east and in a faraway land." The boy journeyed from a realm where love was believed to have emerged, bringing with it the essence of the desert and the cries of the Moorish conflicts. Perhaps in locations past the shepherds, where his flock roamed, men assumed the wind originated from Andalusia. Yet, in truth, the wind arrived from nowhere and directed itself nowhere. This is why its strength surpassed that of the desert. One day, it may be possible for someone to plant trees in the desert and even raise sheep there, but never with the determination of the wind, which claimed that we are fundamentally different. The boy refuted this, asserting that he had learned the secrets of the alchemist during his journeys. Within him resided the winds, the desert, the oceans, the stars, and everything that exists in the universe, all crafted by the same hand and endowed with the same essence. His aspiration was to become like the wind, to traverse every inch of the earth, travel across oceans, unearth the sands that shield his treasure, and transmit the voice of the woman he cherished. He recalled a conversation with the alchemist, who spoke of how everyone possesses their own personal legend, yet humans cannot morph into the wind. Just teach me to embody the wind for a brief moment, he urged, so we could discuss the boundless potential of humankind and the winds. The winds found itself intrigued by these unprecedented propositions, eager to engage in a dialogue about such concepts, yet unsure how to convert a man into the essence of wind. The wind recognized its own unity, having shaped deserts, sunk ships, destroyed entire forests, and swept through cities filled with music and peculiar sounds, feeling as though it had no boundaries. Yet here stood a boy claiming there were remarkable feats they should all be capable of achieving. This is what we refer to as love, the boy remarked, insisting that the wind was close to fulfilling his wishes. In love, one can accomplish anything within creation, and understanding the circumstances is unnecessary as everything unfolds internally. Even men could transform into the wind, provided the wind lent assistance. The wind, proud of its being, felt irritation arising from the boy's words and began to blow harder, stirring the desert sands. Eventually, it had to concede that despite traversing the globe, it lacked the knowledge to transform a man into the wind and understood little about love. In my global travels, I have frequently encountered individuals speaking of love while gazing at the skies, the wind expressed, filled with frustration from recognizing its own constraints. Perhaps it would be preferable to seek riches. Help me achieve that, the boy replied, and filled this space with. The sandstorm was so intense that it concealed the sun, allowing me to gaze upward without risking blindness. The wind surged with tremendous force, filling the sky with sand, transforming the sun into a mere golden disk. Visibility at the camp diminished significantly. The desert dwellers were accustomed to this phenomenon, referring to it as a Simone, worse than any maritime storm. The horses neighed in distress, their gear caked with sand. At an elevated position, one commander turned to the chief, suggesting that perhaps halting would be wise. They could hardly discern the figure of the boy. Their faces obscured, the blue of their uniforms revealed their trepidation. "Let's call it off," another commander insisted. "I yearn to witness Allah's magnificence," he remarked earnestly. "I wish to see how a man can merge with the wind." He mentally noted the names of the two men who exhibited fear. Once the winds calmed, he would strip them of their commands, as true desert dwellers ought not to be frightened. The boy remarked to the sun, "The wind informed me that you understand love. If you grasp love, you must also be aware of the world's essence, since it is comprised of love." "From my vantage point," the sun replied, "I perceive the soul of the world, which connects with mine, and together we foster growth in plants and guide sheep toward sanctity. From where I stand, and it's quite a distance from you, I've learned how to love. I realize that if I were to draw even slightly nearer to the earth, everything would fade, including the world's essence. Thus, we observe and desire one another. The warmth of life fills me with purpose." "So you comprehend love," the boy declared. "And I'm familiar with the world's essence because we converse extensively throughout our journey in the universe. It conveys that its biggest challenge has been that until now, only minerals and plants recognize the unity of all things, that iron need not be identical to copper, nor copper to gold. Each fulfills its own unique function as an individual entity, and everything will harmonize in peace if the hand that scripted this had ceased on the 5th day of creation. Yet, the 6th day continued and the sun persisted. You are insightful because you observe life from afar," the boy noted, "but you lack comprehension of love. Without a 6th day, humanity would not have emerged. Copper would merely remain copper, and lead would only be lead. It's true that each individual has their own personal legend, but there comes a time when that legend will be fulfilled. Thus, EC must evolve into something superior and adopt a new personal legend until the day when the spirit of the world unifies as one." The sun contemplated this and chose to shine with greater intensity. Meanwhile, the wind, relishing the dialogue, began to blow more forcefully, ensuring the sun would not dazzle the boy. "This is the essence of alchemy," the boy remarked, "as it compels everyone to seek their treasure, discover it, and not desire to surpass their lead existence. Lead will fulfill its purpose in a world that no longer requires lead and must eventually transform itself. The objective of Alchemist is to demonstrate that we aspire to become improved versions of ourselves, enhancing everything around us. The boy queried why this was said, to which he answered, "I am unsure about love." The boy then asked, "Why do you say that?" The boy explained that love cannot be stagnant like the desert, nor can it wander like the wind, nor merely observe from afar as you do. Love is the energy that alters and elevates the soul of the world. Initially, when I connected with it, I believed the world's soul was flawless, but eventually, I realized it shares the same struggles and passions as other elements of existence. We nurture the world's soul, and the state of the world hinges on whether we become improved or diminished. This is where the influence of love becomes crucial, for through love, we continually seek to enhance ourselves. "So, what do you desire?" the son asked. "I wish for you to assist me in becoming the wind," the boy replied. Nature, the most insightful entity in creation, offered at sunset. "However, I do not know how to transform you into the wind," the son said. "Then to whom should I turn for help?" The son pondered for a moment, considering the wind, which listened intently, eager to absorb the son's wisdom, the wisdom that had its limits in addressing such a tumultuous situation. "Speak to the hand that crafted everything," the son advised. The wind rejoiced and intensified its gusts, uprooting the tents from their moorings and liberating the animals tied on the cliffs. People grasped one another, trying to avoid being swept away by the wind's might. The boy then faced a hand that penned all existence, sensing the universe fall into a hush, and chose to remain silent. A wave of love surged from his heart, and the boy commenced a prayer, one that he had never expressed previously, as it was a silent prayer of gratitude for his flock, having discovered shepherds did, and requested that the boy have the opportunity to sell more crystal, and it didn't pressure that the woman he encountered persist in her wait for his return. In the quiet, the boy comprehended. The desert, the wind, and the sun were all attempting to comprehend the messages etched by a hand, seeking to trace their paths and interpret what was inscribed on a single entity. He observed that they were consistently scattered across the earth and the cosmos, devoid of reason or significance regarding their emergence. He recognized that neither the deserts nor the winds, nor the sun nor humanity grasped their purpose of creation, but the hand possessed a rationale for it all. Only the hand had the power to create wonders, transforming the sea into a desert or a man into wind, as only the hand apprehended the grand design that orchestrated the universe, which allowed 6 days of creation to burgeon into a masterpiece. The boy connected with the essence of the world and realized it was intertwined with the essence of God, recognizing that God's essence mirrored his own. That day, he soared like never before, and generations later spoke of the legend of a boy who transformed into the wind, nearly toppling the military camp in defiance of the desert's mightiest chief. When the breezes finally stilled, everyone looked to the spot where the boy had once stood, but he had vanished. He stood beside a sand-draped sentinel on the far edge of the canyon. The men trembled at his apparent magic, yet 2 individuals smiled: the alchemist, who discovered his ideal disciple, and the chief, who acknowledged the disciple's understanding of God's magnificence. The next day, the general bid farewell to the boy and the alchemist, providing them with an escort to accompany them as far as they desired. They traveled the road throughout the day, and by late afternoon, encountered a Coptic monastery. The alchemist dismounted and instructed the escorts to return to camp, declaring, "From here, you will be on your own. You're only 3 hours from the pyramids," he said. "Thank you," the boy replied. "You taught me the language of the world." "I merely help you invoke what you already knew," the alchemist responded. He knocked on the monastery's gate, and a monk dressed in black greeted them. They conversed briefly in the common tongue of the alchemist, who requested permission for the boy to enter. The monk complied and allowed him to utilize the kitchen for a time. The alchemist smiled as they moved to the kitchen, located at the back of the monastery. He ignited a fire, and the monk supplied him with some lead, which the alchemist melted in an iron pan after retrieving it from his pouch. The peculiar LOA script, as delicate as a sliver, enveloped in wax and contributing to discomfort, were intended to dissolve. The resulting mixture adopted a crimson hue, resembling blood. The alchemist took the pan off the heat and allowed it to cool while engaging the monk in a conversation regarding the tribal conflicts. "I believe they're going to endure for quite a while," he remarked to the monk, who seemed displeased. "The caravans have been halted at Giza for an extended period, awaiting the worst, and it's up to God's will," replied the monk. "Exactly," responded the alchemist. Once the mixture had cooled, the monk and the boy observed as the lead solidified into the shape of the pan, yet it transformed from lead into gold. "Will I be able to do that one day?" inquired the boy. "That is part of my personal legend, not yours," answered the alchemist. "But I aim to demonstrate that it's achievable." They made their way back to the gates of the monastery, where the alchemist divided the disc into 4 segments. "This is for you," he stated, offering one piece to the monk, "in recognition of your kindness towards the pilgrims." "But this compensation surpasses any act of my generosity," the monk replied. "Do not say that again. Life might be listening and could grant you less next time," advised the alchemist as he turned to the boy. "This is for you, compensating for what you provided to the general." The boy was on the verge of arguing that it was far more than what he had given, but he remained silent upon hearing the alchemist's words to the monk. "And this portion is for me," stated the alchemist, retaining one piece, "because I must return to the desert where tribal strife persists." He then handed the 4th piece to the monk, saying, "This is for the boy, should he ever require it." "I'm on a quest for my treasure," the boy declared. "I am very close to it now." "I am confident you will succeed," said the alchemist. "And why is that?" the boy asked. "It's because you have previously lost your savings twice and had faith before the general. I am an old superstitious man, and I adhere to our proverbs. One states that anything that occurs once can never transpire again, but anything that happens twice will undoubtedly take place a 3rd time." They climbed onto their horses. "I wish to share a story about dreams," began the alchemist. The boy edged his horse closer. "In ancient Rome, during the reign of Emperor Tiberius, there lived a virtuous man with 2 sons. One son served in the military, dispatched to the far reaches of the empire, while the other was a poet who captivated all of Rome with his exquisite verses. One night, the father dreamed of an angel who appeared before him and informed him that the words of one of his sons would become renowned and celebrated globally for generations to come. The father awakened from his dream feeling grateful and emotional because life had been generous, revealing to him something that would make any father proud. Soon after, the father passed away while attempting to rescue his child from being crushed by the wheels of a chariot. Having lived his life with integrity and fairness, he ascended directly to heaven, where he encountered the angel from his dream. "You were always a virtuous man," the angel said to him. "You lived with love and dignity, and now I can fulfill any wish you have." "Life has been good to me," the man replied. "When you visited me in my dream, I felt that my efforts were rewarded, knowing my son's poems will be appreciated by many for generations to come. I desire nothing for myself, but any acclaim earned by someone I cherished as a child and nurtured into adulthood would be just. In the distant future, I wish to witness my son's words." The angel touched him gently, and together they envisioned a time far ahead in an intimate gathering filled with thousands of people speaking an unfamiliar language. The man shed tears of joy, expressing to the angel, "I knew my son's poems would endure. Could you tell me which of his works these individuals are reciting?" The angel moved closer with compassion and guided him to a nearby bench where they sat down. "Your son's verses were indeed beloved," the angel remarked. "Everyone cherished and enjoyed them, but during Tiberius' reign, they were lost to memory. The words you are hearing now belong to your son while he served in the military." The man gazed at the angel in astonishment. "Your son traveled far to serve as a centurion and was an honorable one. One afternoon, a servant fell gravely ill, seemingly on the brink of death. Hearing of a rabbi believed to heal ailments, your son spent days in search of this figure. Along his journey, he learned that the man he sought was the Son of God. He met others who had been healed and absorbed the man's teachings. Thus, despite being a Roman centurion, he embraced their faith. Soon after, he arrived at the location where the man he sought was present. He informed the rabbi that one of his servants was seriously ill, and the rabbi prepared to accompany him to his home. However, The centurion was a man of faith, and gazing into the rabbi's eyes, he realized he was undoubtedly in the presence of the Son of God. The words the angel conveyed to the man were as follows. These are the expressions he shared with the rabbi at that moment, and they have endured through time. My Lord, I am unworthy that you should enter my house, but merely say a word and my servant will be cured. The alchemist remarked that regardless of one's actions, every individual on the planet holds a significant position in the narrative of the world, typically unaware of it. The boy grinned, never realizing how vital inquiries about existence will become for a shepherd. Farewell, said the alchemist. Farewell, the boy echoed. The boy journeyed across the desert for several hours, attentively listening to what his heart was expressing. It was his heart that would reveal where his treasure lay hidden. Where your treasure is, there your heart will also be, the alchemist had stated. However, his heart spoke of different matters. It proudly narrated the tale of a shepherd who would lead his flock in pursuit of a vision he had on 2 separate occasions. It recounted personal legends and the multitude of men who sought distant lands or enchanting women, challenging the people of their era with their preconceived beliefs. It spoke of adventures, revelations, literature, and transformation. As he was about to ascend yet another dune, his heart softly urged him to remember the place that brought them to tears. That's where I reside, and that's where your treasure lies. The boy ascended the dunes gradually while a full moon rose again in the starry expanse. A month had passed since he embarked from the oasis, and the moonlight cast shadows over the dunes, creating an appearance reminiscent of a rolling sea, reminding the boy of the moment when his horse reared in the desert. He came to understand the alchemist, and the moon shone upon the quiet desert, accompanying a man's quest for treasure. Upon reaching the dune summit, his heart soared, lit by the moon's glow and the desert's brilliance, towards the majestic pyramids of Solomon in Egypt. The boy fell to his knees and wept in gratitude, thanking God for instilling the belief in his personal legend and for guiding him to meet the king, a merchant, an Englishman, and the alchemist. Above all, he was grateful for the encounter with the woman of the desert, who assured him that love would never obstruct a man's personal legend. If he wished, he could return to the oasis, go back to reality, and lead the life of a humble shepherd. Nonetheless, the alchemist continued to dwell in the desert despite grasping the world's language, and one must undergo transformation. The objective didn't require anyone to prove a science or artistry. The boy reminded himself during his journey toward discovering his personal legend. He believed he had acquired all necessary knowledge and had lived every experience he had ever desired. Yet, here he stood, on the verge of uncovering his treasure, reminding himself that a venture is not truly finished until its goal is reached. The boy surveyed the surroundings, tears streaming down his face as a scarab hurried across the sand during this time in the desert. He had come to understand that, in Egypt, scarab beetles represent divinity, a sign. The boy began to excavate the dune, reflecting on what the crystal merchant once stated about anyone being capable of constructing a pyramid in their own backyard. The boy now realized that he could build one, placing stone upon stone for as long as he lived. Throughout the night, he persisted in the chosen spot, but discovered nothing. He was burdened by the weight of time, with centuries having passed since the construction of the pyramids, yet he continued to dig, contending with the wind that often filled his holes with sand. His hands were raw and fatigued, but he heated his heart, compelling him to excavate where his tears landed. As he toiled, he noticed figures approaching, their backs illuminated by the moonlight, obscuring their eyes and faces. "What are you doing here?" one of the figures demanded. Terrified, the boy remained silent, having located his treasure and fearing the consequences of revealing it. "We're refugees from the tribal wars and need money," another figure interjected. "What are you concealing?" The boy replied, "I'm not hiding anything." One of them grabbed him forcefully and pulled him out of the hole. Another rummaged through the bags and discovered a piece of gold. "There's gold here," he exclaimed. The moonlight reflected off the man's face, and within his gaze, the boy perceived death. They compelled him to continue digging, but he unearthed nothing. As dawn broke, the men began to assault him. He was battered and bleeding. His skin was torn, and he sensed that death was imminent. "What value does money hold for you if you are to die?" "It's rare that wealth can save a life," said the alchemist. Finally, the boy shouted at the men, "I'm digging for treasure." Even with a swollen and bleeding mouth, he declared this to his assailants. He had experienced dreams on 2 occasions about a treasure concealed close to the Egyptian pyramids. The man, seemingly the group's leader, addressed one of his companions, instructing them to disregard the boy as he likely had nothing worthwhile and must have taken this gold from someone else. The boy collapsed onto the sand, nearly losing consciousness, and received a remark of relief from the man. However, before departing, he returned to the boy and assured him that he would not perish. He would survive and learn that a man shouldn't act foolishly. 2 years earlier, right at this very location, he too had recurrent dreams in which he was guided to travel to the hills of Spain in search of a dilapidated church where shepherds and their sheep rested. His vision included a sycamore tree sprouting from the ruins of a sacristy, where he was informed that digging at the tree's roots would lead to buried treasure. Still, he wasn't foolish enough to traverse the entire desert merely due to this latest dream and its subsequent fading. The boy rose unsteadily and regarded the pyramids once again, sensing they derided him, and he reciprocated with laughter, his heart swelling with joy as he finally understood the location of his treasure. Epilogue. The boy arrived at the small deserted church just as twilight settled in. The sycamore still stood in the sacristy, and the stars could be glimpsed through the ruined roof. He recalled a previous visit with the sheep. It had been a tranquil night aside from the dream. Now, he found himself there without his flock, only a shovel in hand, gazing skyward for an extended period. Finally, he retrieved a bottle of wine from his knapsack and took a sip, recalling the night in the desert when he sat with the alchemist, admiring the stars while sipping wine together. He contemplated the many paths he had ventured, understanding the peculiar manner in which God had guided him to his treasure. Had he not trusted the importance of repeated dreams, he would not have encountered the gypsy woman whose influence was pivotal. Though the journey had a lengthy list of challenges, the signs were clear, and he reassured himself that he was following the right path. He drifted off to sleep, and upon waking, found the sun already high. He began digging at the sycamore's base, shouting to heavens, "You old sorcerer, you knew the entire tale. You even left a bit of gold at the monastery to ensure I could return." The monk laughed upon seeing him in tatters, saying he had saved him from despair. The wind responded, whispering that if he revealed everything, he wouldn't have laid eyes on the pyramids, which were breathtaking. The boy smiled and continued his work. After half an hour of digging, the shovel made contact with something firm, and an hour later, a chest filled with Spanish gold coins appeared before him. Alongside the coins were exquisite gemstones, gold masks decorated with red and white feathers, and stone statues adorned with jewels, remnants of a conquest that had long been forgotten by the nation, an event that some conquistador had neglected to pass down to his offspring. The boy withdrew the agreement dooming from his bag, knowing he could only utilize the 2 stones once. One morning, while at the marketplace, he reflected on how life had always presented him with sufficient signs. He decided to place the agreement dooming inside the chest, considering it part of his newfound fortune, as it symbolized the old king he would never encounter again. The boy mused that life truly rewards those who chase their personal legends. He then recalled that he needed to find Teresa to fulfill his promise of sharing a portion of his treasure with the gypsy woman. Those gypsies were incredibly astute, which he thought might be due to their constant mobility. As the wind began to stir once more, it was a Levant, the breeze from Africa that did not carry the threat of Moorish invasion, but instead bore the fragrance of familiar perfume and the gentle caress of a kiss from afar, gradually settling upon his lips. The boy grinned. It was the first time she had done that. "I'm coming," he declared. The end.